Sorry, guys. I'm multitasking. All right. Excuse me.
Welcome to Hollywood.
Hi, hello. Hello.
All right. Sorry, guys. We're good.
A perfect world is a perfect prison.
Oh my goodness. We're gonna need your all support today, man. Today is the big day.
Installed and ready to go.
Today is the big day, guys.
Hello.
5, 4, 3.
Time's the announcement. 2:30.
Attack commencing. Capture objective.
A lot of 3 a.m. nights on this. Is there a Weaver behind me? Oh.
Oh, they might
Nice. Quick fix.
Did I just hit the Ana? I did. Wow, that's so unlucky. Come back.
Enemy here. Enemy sighted. All alive.
You saw us now. You're canceling MINEPLEX PvE. Yeah.
Objective A captured. Escort the payload.
I'm pretty excited, chat. Here's why. Got him. I will say I think it's really funny watching people like
I was sick. That was sick.
My baby's under attack.
I just find it funny seeing like all the Minecrafters think so inside the box. It's just funny.
So, or on a half.
Oh my.
On a low, on height.
Oh my. I'm out of here, dog. Oh, he's one. No, he did-
On a
he's-
half. Brick one.
He's going. He's gonna kill our
I'm
team.
gonna go push for it.
He's low, Torb. He's low.
Thank you.
Enemy marked.
What the fuck's going on back here?
There's Doomfist behind us.
There's
And
a
Brig?
brig
Is
here.
Brig
There's a
dead?
brig.
Brig.
No,
No,
she's
Brig's
there.
here. Brick's not here
Okay,
anymore.
keep me and flip up pushing cards.
That's scary. Don't die.
Brig alone now. Doomfist here.
Oh my goodness.
Go trap.
Got him. That's actually a fat tree.
Brig.
Okay, he was nanon on me.
Soldier one on top.
Ravens are not the only thing Ravens are smoking are Joe Burrow's freaking or Jamar Chase's tail whip pipe. I don't know. Whatever. Is Brick still broken? Brick, yeah, of course she is. They never. Chat. I was thinking about it last night. I think reworked Brig is genuinely more broken than old Brig. Like not like launch Brig, but like when they first reworked Brig in Overwatch 1, right? Where they gave her like the 3 packs and shit. Like I think that was actually a massive buff. I actually think that they buffed her with that rework. If I kill him, I'm the goat. Oh my god. Oh, he's mad about that.
I am restored.
I tried to get punched into the mega. That was my goal.
Oh my god, I just got sandwiched.
I missed.
I almost have nothing.
That's alright, though. You're probably not inspired. Nah, I think even Reddit knows how broken Inspire is, right? Everybody, like, I actually think Inspire is the most broken ability they ever put in the game. Like, more than Drone, more than anything else. Like, Inspire is genuinely busted.
Whoa, they have a widow.
Oh, what is one? What is one? What is one? Ah.
I'm not peeking her.
Yeah.
Because it was so consistent, right? Like, it's perma up.
Where's the map? If you destroy Immo.
How am I? What happened to me? Oh, I got flailed. That was really fun.
Take cover. The tree's gone.
They really don't trust me. No, Inspire's busted, dude. Everybody says Inspire's busted. Like that's just like you can find dumb takes like that like anywhere.
I'll have Coom when I get back. You guys
Come
might
back.
be able to push it without a Coom.
Doom on point. Go for Doom on point first. You will kill everyone.
Yeah, yeah. Nice.
Good round.
That guy was only punching me, man. The bitch.
Score.
No, it's like, listen, I'm telling you, like,
Switching sides.
I didn't understand. Like, people think of just I'm just a Brig hater, guys. Like, what really made me hate Brig was when I mastered her. Like, I'm telling you, like, once I recognized and like understood the character and all the gears connected in my head back in Goats meta, I realized just how
Life Weaver show you like a Brig or something.
absolutely broken
Beaver's
this
son.
hero was. Right? Like, seriously, it's insane.
I am always ready to learn.
Hi, hello. It's not a opening. Hello.
A perfect world is a perfect world is a perfect prison.
No mistakes.
Just the boring defensive playstyle. You realize how automated playing the game becomes just by picking Brigitte. When's the MINEPLEX announcement? It's at 2:30. It's on our YouTube channel. Can someone get the links to our YouTube channel today for me, please? The Inspire's more broken than Discord. Yes, I do. I do. I think Inspire is probably the most broken ability they've ever put in the game. Like, Inspire is responsible for 2 format changes. Like, I genuinely believe that. Like, we don't get roll queue, and we certainly get roll queue, and we certainly we might get 5v5 too. Careful, we need to clear him.
Not bad.
That was a nice battle. That's funny.
No, don't give him punches.
I'm just going LeBron mode out here. My goodness. Can Inspire heal people through walls? Yes, it can, because if as long as they're in it when the effect gets activated, they're guaranteed to get it even if they break line of sight, right? So like breaking line of sight just doesn't matter. You have 5 seconds of healing, and it used to be 6. Oh, no way.
Doom.
Like, I'm telling you, it's insane, and its range is so big. Like the fact that they never nerfed its range is also crazy. Like they never made it so that if you left the aura, you just didn't get healed, and you just like they never. It's still to this day is like that. It's insane. I'm not sure who I copied. I probably copied their Vapor Brig.
I'm doing it now. Go ahead.
So I copied, I got the animation, and then I died.
Echo
My train's
things.
gone. Find cover.
It's okay.
Hey, stalled and ready to go.
It is the worst ability. Bad for dudes with for completely different reasons. Yep.
Stop the payload.
They push this. I'll kill them here. Copy.
I'm on fire right now.
Just kidding. I'm just stunned.
Ash 1. She is healed.
Enemy spotted.
I'll probably come back and just copy their Brig, and we can just brawl their Sig.
Ash low again. Your Torb can't peek you, Yari. Oh crap. Your Torb can't peek you, Yari. Can you come to me? Oh no, I'm dead. That's okay.
I'm just dead flying to point 3 times. This is great.
Yeah, I couldn't really walk anywhere.
Yeah, I was trying to jump to you, but
We just gotta group up. I'm just copying the first thing I see, considering I've died trying to cast it 3 lives in a row. I love this. London, thanks to 10 gifted, dog. Chat, don't worry. I'll just copy nothing, I guess.
Okay, I'm getting off this character.
I'm on point. I'm Brig. Just Brig. Brig and Bap actually. Yeah, like, I'm gonna lose a 1v1 to Bap. Can anyone help on point, please? Anyone? Point,
I'm
please?
almost there. I can keep
Dude, I don't even know, man.
We are doing other things. Sorry.
okay, we won the fight. I'm on.
I use my ult! My ult cast, chat. Woo! We should definitely ult them really early 3 fights in a row so we get 2 fights here, guys. They're main. Yeah, we should go first. We should go first. Get Brig, get Brig. Oh my god. Oh, they're on card. We gotta get them off card, guys. Ash point, Ash point. Just dead. There's no contest where it needs to be. Our tank's not there. No one's there. Look at where we are. Look at our setup. We need to start with Flux, not Ilario.
I could do there.
Chat, starting with, we needed to start with Flux to keep them where we wanted them, and then go with Ilario. But instead, yeah, just used all of our ults wrong.
No, we don't touch. We give. We play for third.
I'm gonna go Bastion. Okay, just the complete wrong ult cycle there.
I am actually just always dead right now. I'm just gonna start playing really safe.
That's a great idea.
Like not even gonna be aggressive at all.
That's how you're supposed to play. That's how you're supposed to play Torb. Maybe I go Hanzo. She's playing Hanzo into like brigging shit. She's useless. There's an Asher there. You might be able to go kill her.
I'm ready. I got full heals for you. I'm gonna go. Can we help us six?
Burn this Bob. He's gonna die. Oh, that's on the card. Careful, careful, careful. Okay, I can sentry here. Sentry here. Oh, stick and die, stick and die.
Wait, my fucking. Oh my.
On the left,
My
on the
rush
left,
is
on the
like
left.
2 centimeters fucking long.
Okay, I'm gonna start playing aggressive again.
Okay.
I get way more value this way.
My gameplay does not change.
Oh, I'm just gonna sit on the payload.
See,
I
I
guess.
changed
London,
depending on
thanks
how
to
my
that gifted.
teammates play.
Is that Hale with the gifted too?
That's how I work.
Hellmans, thanks to the 10, man. You guys both just gifted 20 subs. Thank you guys for the memberships. I appreciate it, boys. I appreciate it. Big day today, guys.
I'm positioning in the back here.
Ash 1 HP. She might die to that actually. Oh, she didn't die. That's okay.
I forced her on. I forced her on. God, I'm so close to
1
hell.
HP.
Maybe we just go stall. Gotta lose this. They just fucking roll us with ults. They just roll us with ults every fight. That's all it is.
Yeah, we're always down one.
Yeah. I think my Torb doesn't play aggressive there. We started with.
Yeah, I died early that fight.
Yeah, I think you just play passive, honestly, and just like play to poke until they walk in. I think if anyone of us plays aggressive, it's me. And then you just play the off angle.
Just go Mercy and pocket you here on Echo. I can.
Nah, I'm not gonna play Echo. I might play Hanzo or Ash. I take all biddies and Alex, thanks to the gifted. I appreciate it, guys.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
But yeah, chat, I'm not gonna lie, it's been it's been really funny watching the MINEPLEX kids try to like they just there's this thing I like to refer to as Minecraft brain, right? Like anybody who like stayed with MINEPLEX or like has just been grinding Minecraft the last 7 years just has Minecraft brain, and what I mean by that is everybody just thinks so inside the box. Like I'm really glad that I left Minecraft for a long time and was able to go see like what the rest of the industry was doing really well. And watching what these kids like the ideas are just so recycled. It's just so funny.
Well, they're not gonna have any ults to beat us here, so.
As you don't feed.
Vap 1 HP headshot.
No stock on Sigma. Genji behind us. The high ground. Here. He's on top. He's on top.
He's half, he's one. Got him.
Yeah, there we go. Push these. Don't worry, guys.
Look half.
Don't worry. I got this game for us. It's fine. We're having that debate you were gonna do at SVP last week. It's up, bro. It's up. We killed it.
Nice hold, everybody.
It's like the Overwatch community. Well, yeah, you know, it's funny. I think this is why it's so important to like be aware of everything that goes on in the industry and keep your ear to the floor and just be looking around, right? Because you end up in these echo chambers. Lost Kid, thanks to the gifted dog. I appreciate it. You end up in these like, you end up stagnating, right? And that's just really bad for everybody.
Let's go. I've got a few new invasions to try.
Behind you! Ah! Behind you!
No mistakes, no mercy.
You're gonna use social media again with MINEPLEX announcement? Yeah, that's why I reactivated. I'm gonna help get MINEPLEX off the ground, and then I'm probably gonna get rid of my apps. It's just, I don't know, dude. Like social media, guys, it's so fake, dog. It's not what's important. Like the culture around it nowadays. Maybe I'm just getting old, but like, it's just not what it is for me, man. It's just not, you know. It's just not. I see why big executives and all these people who get older just don't use the platforms. They're just not worth it. They have a sim somewhere.
Left side, yeah.
Yeah, but play the sim at range. Play the sim at range.
Ash for left.
Right side, right side, right.
No way.
More, they used them more.
Oh, I headshot the sim and she lives. Are you serious? Alright, I'm gonna go back over that. Just need to kill the Ash and we win.
Ash dead.
That's fair.
Okay, we should fight this fast before she gets back so I can go really aggro and get above them.
They have turrets on entrance.
I forced him way back. Where's Ash here?
Take one.
Ash dead.
Okay, I'm going really high here, okay? Can we wrap on them? I'm just slowly wrap it. Oh no.
I'm dead.
Tap headshot.
Still one inside. Hop off.
Okay, nice. I pulled him back. Sick die. Now break. Okay, I just carried that so hard for my positioning.
GG's.
My positioning there was so good. Yeah. You guys see how my positioning just hard won that game? What's up, Babs? Thanks to the dollar, man. I like seeing all the drama from your Overwatch takes. Yeah, I mean, yeah. That was back when I cared to try to change people's minds. Now I just don't, you know? Explain your position, please. Because the Ash died and they had no hit scan, I was able to fly above them and create a pinch angle, right? You want to create crossfires. And because the Ash was dead twice, I got to go wherever I want on the map, and it split their team and forced them way back. So we had all the space. Yeah, like I deleted my Instagram chat. I deleted my my Twitter. And once MINEPLEX gets in a good spot, I'll probably delete my Twitter. It's just fake, man. Like, it makes you... It's a false sense of reward. It keeps you stagnant, right? Like, you get the interactions on social media, and you think you're doing something, but you're really not. Like, you're really not doing anything, right? It's a big bait, you know? It's not like if you're, like, streaming where you're directly connecting with an audience and, like, running... I guess they added monetization and stuff. It's not like... It's just not an important part of the business, you know? Did you know that Alari's healing beam does more healing than Echo's full focusing beam, even the target is under 50% health? Yeah, I know. Dang, that's crazy. I literally don't know anybody off of social media. Maybe we all need to go out. I'm not saying personal relationships, right? Like personal friends that you use on like through Discord or something like that. Like that's different, right? I'm saying just like putting out stuff to the masses, like on Twitter and stuff. It's just pointless, right? But like meeting people, obviously, and making friendships are valuable. It's so insane they didn't touch Alari in the midseason. I don't know. Good ideas don't get executed. Ideas that are backed by the right people do. Caring too much and being right often causes... Yeah, it's... Exactly. Dude, I'm not calling Twitter X. I'm sorry. I'm not doing that. You should give MINEPLEX the Overwatch a pass. I'm good. I'm good on that. He says, prove me wrong. The most value you can get in Overwatch right now is clicking quit game and playing something else. What do you think about changing life grips in an area on the ground where the life lever throws down and the person has to walk over and take it like they would a sim TP? I don't know. Like, chat, honestly, like, my long-term goal for MINEPLEX, like I've told you guys, like I don't want to run the company forever, right? Like I'm trying to actively seek out
Prepare for battle.
somebody who could run it better than I can. It's very quickly leaving my realm of expertise. And what I've learned is to be a good leader, you've got to find the right people to put in the right positions, right? Because you can't be good at everything,
Yo.
right?
Is up, gamers.
Yeah, Robert. CFO, pink.
I'm gonna play Sig on this map, just
Dot-
because it's
Thoughts on
sure.
dating someone who's hard
But,
sucking gold?
I don't know. I'll
Thanks,
probably switch
Sam.
like Monkey on. Actually, I could play Monkey.
Good luck.
I don't know. Kind of depends.
I am always
Yeah, I'm
ready
going
to
Monkey.
learn.
Respectfully, Sig does nothing with his comp.
Ew.
So you should have a Z credit of MINEPLEX
Let's get it.
experience to make it easier over time by adding
Did
characters
we
that
try
play
to
for
fight
you.
main and we look
It,
for
it
enemies
works
and
for the
nades and shit?
casuals, bro.
Right there. Okay, that'd be cool. Nice. Okay, we gotta wait for mobile usage.
Well, she shouldn't be able to kill me there.
Can't see it.
Yeah, might.
Why did my Genji just walk out of Samito? We're trolling.
If I were you, but
Just back up.
yeah.
Sure.
Oh. I mean, I might be able to go like ram here. I'm not gonna do much on monkey. So this is fine.
Watch when she dies, by the way. Tor, right here. Oh. Oh, damn.
No fade.
Where is this Blue Eater's turret?
Okay, I'm pushing out a little bit. I'm
Just
pushing out.
fuck him out. Just fuck him out. Where's him? What the hell?
6 hits.
Okay. One above. Go low.
Zarya's super low. Zarya's so low. Zarya's so low with no bubbles. I'm just gonna close this out.
Big.
Nice.
Kill it, kill it, kill it.
Huge. Nice copy.
No, we close it out. Yo, London with the 10 gifted again. London, listen guys, listen guys. No donations here today.
That some hurts a lot.
I appreciate it. I really do. I want you all to save this energy for me later. Okay? I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I really do. But I need you all to save that for later today. Okay? He's trying to wall. Can we walk past his wall or no?
Can we play back a point? Okay, bye. I don't get to play a game, I guess.
Okay, winnable,
Nice
winnable.
kills.
Throw one.
Nice.
I'll
They're
touch,
just
I'll touch, I'll
running
touch.
over me, man. It's great.
Finally, it's still killing you.
Yeah, pretty much.
Alright.
And then
Hey,
we just shoot them.
I really do appreciate it, guys. Keep this energy for later, though, okay?
I'm also running a ram just so I can survive.
I appreciate you guys.
Good enough, guys.
Seriously, thank you, thank you. Thank you all. 46 gifted members. You guys are nuts. Thank you so much. Holy shit.
Oh, Echo, if you want to go for something, I can bubble you.
Give me a sec. Yeah, I'll go in and now. Do you see me on the
Yeah,
left?
yeah. Yeah, okay. Wait, so you're just a bit later.
No, you're good. You're good. I'm just kidding.
I don't have bubbles. We're quite dead here. Oh my, nice heals.
Adaptive circuits engaged. Moira.
No, okay, we're good.
Okay.
God.
I'm back.
I'm bubbling you, Becco.
He didn't touch.
Nice. Good
Nice.
job, Echo. You carried so hard.
Oh
dude.
my
Holy-
god. Holy shit. Oh my god.
I mean, Hans were good too, but like, damn, the Echo stickies were huge. And I love you for keeping me up in that grav. I definitely should not have lived.
Mission ready.
I mean, I'm gonna be real
Nah,
with you.
listen.
I think I could go Ram.
I really appreciate the donos, guys, but seriously,
Sorry,
thank you so
Lucio.
much. Keep this. You know what? I guess do whatever y'all want. I'm not gonna tell you no. I'm not gonna tell you no. However, I think that you should wait till 2:30 today if you really want to do some good.
Nah, I think Anna's good.
Capture the objective.
Yeah, the announcement's at 2:30 today.
Let's try to keep it up.
John
Yeah,
Crab.
I'm trying to take some good space.
Wait, come left, guys. Come left. Come left for a stack. Come left.
Yeah. We're gonna lose the right side.
Just play it. Make them play us range, right? So see, make them play poke with their Hanzo.
Yeah, Lucio won.
Careful,
Lucio
careful.
won, bro.
Just keep backing here. Make them push into our Hanzo. My team is. Why did we come out
Can't
Lucio?
stop it, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we just want to keep back in there. We don't want to engage.
Team kill.
Like our,
I'm legitimately asking why do we just not engage there?
because
Just
they have
'cause they
Junk
have
Reaper and we have
pushes.
Echo Hanzo, and if we back, they have no shield for our Echo and
I
Hanzo
got
to
you.
shoot
I
them.
got you. We just want to play longer range.
Well, yeah, now
try and
we
play
can.
left side, yeah.
Now we kind of can. We kind of have to brawl, but
Yeah. Now we can go left side. Like we can push left
Junk
side.
low. But I have a really good angle here.
Enemy in sight.
We have good angle.
You can't get help here. We're even.
Disintegrating. Targeting hostile.
Moira's half. Yeah, it's kind of up. It's. I don't even know how to stop it. Like,
That Lucio pick was just not
I think I
useful.
just think it's all. I think I can go. I just am struggling.
Play slow. He's gonna have grab.
Yeah.
They're walking in. Listen, give me a second to set up here. I'm gonna fly in and copy. I'm gonna try to copy their Moira.
One a ball.
Nice.
I did not need to do that. Oh well.
Oh, it's alright. It's alright. Can you get up? Okay. We can hold this space.
He's gonna bubble. No charge him. Nice. He's gonna use another one in a second. Listen, we have to play a little bit farther back.
That's both bubbles. That's both bubbles.
Like, yeah, make sure we're ready to back on them. They're gonna rush out Blossom.
Nice.
Play alive here.
Show up. I'm trying.
See how I'm avoiding taking damage? But keep our Zarya up.
Enemy in sight.
We have kids today. We can win.
Okay.
Play alive. I'm gonna go on Soldier up top in 2, 1. Tell me how, yeah. I mean, like.
Moira's half. That's wild.
I'll play that better next time. Like,
They're just running on.
now
like,
we just
run on me.
yeah. That's all they're gonna do.
Yeah.
We can just grab when they come out.
We're grabbing
I hit every ability.
Soldier's left side.
Yeah.
They're all going left.
They're rotating left.
Yeah, you can just chuck it. Yeah.
Big.
Nice. Here. Oh, I got you.
Thank you.
I just
Yeah, I'll beam harder.
we almost have nanovisor. Honestly, we could just play long angles with a nanovisor, and then we have copy.
I have copy. Now we can stay up here with copy. I think.
They can't take poke. Like if they poke, will they just lose?
Slow. Hold on.
Both DPS are on the flank.
Adaptive circuits engaged.
Nice.
GG's.
I just bubbled him. GG's.
Ooh,
I was
that was
a
a tank experience game, guys. It
dominant
was good fun.
performance from your boy on the
Just let my
Echo.
DPS do everything, and I just get ran on, and I hope they use everything for me. Woo!
You missed one sticky, unfortunately. Yeah, I want to see that again. I don't think I missed an ability on that soldier and he just lived. I actually don't think I missed a single ability there, and I think he just literally hard tanked it. Hold on a second. Look at this, guys. Was it this fight? I think it... No, it was this. Oh, yeah, here it was, here it was, here it was.
Happy to be of assistance. Let the Kitsune guide you.
Look at this.
Positioning.
Did he have any beat? Yeah, he did. So he lost a little bit of impact damage. And I missed some of the beam. Yeah. Wow. Hellbits, thank you so much, dude. I appreciate you guys gifting all those memberships today, chat. Be sure to show Hale and London some love. Is that Burger Billy too? Burger Billy. Thanks to the 5, Burger Billy. That's got to be Burger Billy. He's got burgers in his profile pic. Man, I'm hungry. Will you be streaming to the MINEPLEX announcement? I'll be ending about an hour before. I'm probably going to end in about 2 hours. Because I have to host a creator call before that. Tips on Echo? I don't know, bro, honestly. No, we're not releasing today, no. But we're announcing what we're doing.
In my world, there are no secrets. A party was boring. Double. You make great target triple. Watch and learn.
Yeah, the announcement's today.
It's time to save the world. Smashing. Double. Back we go. Double. Triple kill. Enemy here. Quadruple kill. Quintuple kill. Sextuple kill. Double. Triple kill. Quadruple kill. Quintuple kill. Enemy spotted. Sextuple kill. Have we been here before? Double kill.
Have you seen the news with Unity? Yeah, it's really interesting. I think they just approached that poorly. Like, look, they like, there's a right and a wrong way to go about that, and they just did it the wrong way. It's the guy that lost to Jake. What's up, BP? That was a lot of fun. I love podcasts like that, and just conversations like that in general. Like, I just get in the zone. It's really fun.
Triple kill.
Make a video on how to get better on Echo. I did a long time ago. I don't know how much time I'm gonna have in the short term to do that, to be honest with you. Like, but you need someone as heated as you. Yeah. Well, I just need somebody who's like, listen, dude. The Overwatch streamers, VP, good people, right? But not a lot of them. Not a lot of them have the personality to be able to handle that kind of conversation. You know what I'm saying? Like, respectfully, you know what I mean? Respectfully, you know? Like, you know, that's just not the personality, right? No, they're just so flip-flop. Jake will die on a hill. Yeah, that's facts. That's facts. That's facts. That's facts. That's facts. Like, they shy away from controversy, if that makes sense. Like, you know, like, they don't. I don't know. It's just not the personality, right? It's just not. Jake will die on a hill. Well, that's like, you just got to be willing to do that, right? And but also be willing to have the conversation. Like, even for me, like, I always had that personality, but it took me a couple years to, like, learn how to articulate it, right? That's why, you know what, guys? That's why I'm really happy I've been going on group up the last couple years. Like my ability to articulate things has gotten much better because of group up. Me watching in real time, Sheeta learn to raise his hand. No, I always did that in school though. Is Hawk bad at arguing? He was so good in that debate, but he was tripping over his words. No, I don't think Hawk's bad at arguing. It just, like, listen, guys, like, the different, like, going on a podcast like that and going on a debate is a different skill set from knowledge, right? It's something that even I struggle with, like, now, right? Where it's like, you just have to learn how to articulate, and it's just like any other skill, right? It takes time, it takes repetitions, and you can't, like, you're not just gonna pick it up and be a god, right? Like, that's true. That's true for any skill set, you know. Like, it just is what it is there. Oh, I should have saved deflect, but oh well. It's always forward. Oh, my bad. Baccalaureate, that's low. Go ahead and knock me away. Yeah. There's a soldier up there. Go around the right and clear the soldier. Look at this comp, bro. I just want to play Genji, man. Let's go around right and clear him. I'm gonna get there. This freaking rat is just hammering his turret. Queen, hey Queen, we should go up top and kill him. Methinks. Do the funny. I'm gonna charge. I'm gonna jump over the charge. Lucio does not have a monitor. I'm not with you, Queen. They're gonna fight this. Where's the soldier? Soldier's gone. They're just. How are you full health? How are you instantly full health, man? God! This fucking drone! Oh, the fucking supports in this game just ruined the gameplay, man. I'm telling you, see, in 6v6 supports didn't have to heal that quickly that much.
I'm not too sure. I think I may have killed the Ryan with Shatter, but he might have it still.
Over there! Over there!
Oh my god. You see Spyler's video explain exercising points on what was said in the pod? No, I didn't. I'd love to see that actually. I love Spylo, man. Spylo's a great dude. Spylo's worked really hard in this scene, man. I'm glad to see him like come up as a creator. He's one of the few people that I'm like, I actually like really genuinely want to see succeed in this scene. Like, I understand the amount of work he's had to put in over the years. That's no small feat. I can go with Blade here in a second. You guys ready? I'll make that turret for me. We'll go. 3, 2, 1, let's go.
He missed it.
No, he hit me.
Oh, he hit you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy.
Oh!
Oh, ew.
Oh! I got him. Oh. That's Howie.
Like,
Stupid ass pylon.
No anymore.
Just take my keyboard. Just go ahead and drop the shipping address and go ahead and take my keyboard, big dog. Dude, this kid is getting clapped.
Oh.
getting shit on. Oh no. I'm gonna come around the corner and Helix. Ah! They're gonna have window again. I need to wait. Hold on. I'm deflecting 4. All right, we can go. We can go with Kitsune. They're gonna window. Back on the top. We're slow. Don't get back up. Oh, fucking Fortnite. Up. She Bob? Genji's up here. Wait a minute. What is this wall climb, bro? I'm trolling. Nice healing, thank you. I'm trolling. I got you, bro. I'm with you, man. I think these guys should just take my keyboard, you know? I'm just kidding. Oh, we got push card. Kill Bastion coming out. Kill that Alari, that's a big kill. I'm not too low to deal with it. I'm just cut. I'm just cut, bro. Sam, original how to become a god, Genji guide. Yep. Dude, look at these guys. Like, I just want to play Genji, and they're picking this shit. Like, oh my god, I'm staying. I'm getting a big blade here. We're gonna win, I believe. There's no window. Did they waste your drone?
Dude, I cannot peek that.
I'm in! I'm stuck! I'm dead. Alright, I'm just a genius. I'm just a fucking criminal mastermind out here. Look at that. All that to just get fucking smoked by a better hero than mine. I don't think our Kiri's here, by the way. Our Bap's not here yet. Hold on. Bash him behind, up top. Oh, stay in your drone. What are you doing, you bot? We can go a beat, maybe win this. Oh. Dude, my bat walked out of his drone, dog. Still got that turret on the right side. You have Widow? I need to get this guy now. Oh my god! Yeah, I have copies still.
I'm top left with window.
Yeah, that's fine. Just set up app. They have Tracer touching. I'm gonna try to. Nice, guys. Oh my goodness.
Score.
How's that watch PvP at the minute? It's something.
Switching sides. Prepare your defenses. Select your hero.
All right. What do I play here? Do I just?
Go get Rekka.
I want to play Genji. These kids are gonna come out and bash the torb.
Play after that.
Then they're gonna come out and hit scan and just switch.
May?
I'm committed.
If we do this right, they
It's
won't
the
even
announcement.
know
We're announcing what we're doing at MINEPLEX.
It was not easy.
If Blizzard offers you to be a part of the battle team, will you accept? No. I have way too much other stuff going on to even consider it, and even if I didn't, I still probably wouldn't. Well, no.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Balancing 5v5 is an uphill battle. Chat, can someone find me the link to Spylo's video on the debate? I'd love to see it. Oh my god.
Rig May. Whoa. And Bastard.
I hate these kids.
And they're on BAP.
Oh, break Troy, no bash.
Wait, I'm like actually good. The knife on that BAP.
They went Farah. Dude, what are these freaking?
Dude, that's a great matchup for you.
These kids are weird, dude.
She's one. Nice, thank you. Oh,
We got one.
That's okay though.
Oh, they went Genji. They got off our.
That hero is just 10 times mine. That hero is just 10 times mine. Alright, I'm playing Echo. This is stupid.
I am always ready to learn.
And announce what the announcement is and what is the point of the announcement. Exactly. See if we can cut this pile on here. He died. Nice ult. Okay. Surely they don't walk out this door, right?
Early. Genji now. Oh wait, this is where I'm starting.
Oh, he did. Just gave me my ult. Alright, who do I copy? I'm copying Genji. Look, you guys ready for this? This is about to be epic.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Hold on, wait, we gotta bait them in. No, you don't.
1-1. Nice.
Yeah, this is a copy of all time.
One. Nice.
Alright. Oh, they were Widow and
By the
Orisa.
way, Care, Widow Soldier.
And Orisa.
Not enough hit scan for you, and Alari. Oh, no,
He swapped, bro. What? Like, nah.
These people are so weird.
These kids need Jesus.
First dropping in.
Let's back up. Let's just get out. Let's just get out.
Let's get to here. Hold on.
You could Kitsune this long angle if you wanted to, but I think we just wait. We should do it when you get it.
Yeah, you can go. We can go. Get to here. Drop the dirt. There. Go on.
Okay, now we fight close. Surely they don't come out this door again, right? Oh my god, he did.
Early.
Hey, you know who you sound like?
Who?
You sound like Samito.
I'm Howie though.
Exactly. It just I know. He sounds like him.
Howie, bro.
Hanzo's one.
No more, no more.
Oh my, that's thick. Surely they don't come out this door again. They keep just giving me 30% ult because they keep walking out that door.
Dude, I'm getting hit by every CC right now. What the fuck? I peek and then I get hit by versus spear.
My bad.
Okay, I just got back.
My bad, my bad. My bad.
This time I have it.
My bad. My bad. My bad. My bad. I used my ability against Ilari. Not even against Ilari, with Ilari on the map. See that bash on high, guys?
I'm no belt for that. Nice
You guys, yeah. They're trolling. Like, if they just have people on cart, they would have capped.
That was a very
Got you, bro.
good lesson.
These kids are trolling.
Like, if they actually push up their caps, lol.
These kids are trolls. MF Quacktane is 11 and 14 out here.
Junkrat.
Why are you going top left?
Oh, that kid's
Alright, one.
Okay, I'm just gonna wait.
I'm copying this J-Cell. I'm going in.
PG.
Good job, Howie.
Good job, Otta. How is this not my blade?
Drop team.
What is this?
Because I'm 52 and 6.
Nah. The blade was better. The blade was better. Degree of difficulty not taken into account in pot G. He pressed one key. I pressed a bunch. Chat, I'm playing Genji this game. And the video link is in Discord. Oh, let me peep it.
Is 5v5 better for the game or is 6v6 better for the game? Now, SVB just did a phenomenal group up podcast with Samito, Avril, Hawk, and Jake, and they talked about it at over 3 hours runtime. And I managed to managed to sit through the entire thing, and I took notes throughout the entire session. And I've compiled these notes, highlighting their major arguments, and I'm going to provide my own critiques or criticisms or things that I agree or disagree with those arguments. And then at the end, most importantly, I'm going to try and sum up both sides of the argument as best I possibly can, give my closing statements, and maybe bring in a couple of things.
Yeah, guys, if I end up not being able to like upload as much Overwatch in the long term, like Spylo's definitely a channel that you should go. Like the channels I'd recommend you watch if you actually want to learn shit are Awkward and Spylo. Because like Awkward won't sugarcoat things, and neither will Spylo. So they're the kind of people that like if you want to actually grow, instead of just staying in your echo chamber, you should go listen to.
As well in the actual video that I think would be good. So big shout out for SVB for hosting this podcast. I'm going to link his podcast, the podcast itself, in the description. I really, if you have the time to listen through it all the way through, I highly recommend it. This video is for those of you who don't want the that don't have the time to, or really just want my thoughts on the subject. So I checked with SVB as well. I'm usually not a guy to do the whole React content thing, but I figured that this would be okay, and he said it was totally fine. So we're gonna take a look at this, especially because I want to give my own takes on this. So we're gonna start off with Samito and Hawk are on the 6v6 side. Hawk is an Overwatch League tank player from Atlanta Reign. Samito, obviously a streamer, ex-pro player. Someone who's been playing in the scene for a long time. Avril is a pro caster, has been in the scene for years and years and years. Jake, pro player, pro coach, pro caster, done pretty much everything here. Samito, 5v5 tank dynamic experience. I'm gonna try and timestamp these at different point in time. These are the opening statements. Samito says the 5v5 tank dynamic experience is rough. It feels the counter pick thing, support power creep is an issue. I like roll queue, but we never got a chance to show balance with the 6v6. Avril goes with his opening statement.
Damn.
I am always ready to learn.
Hate to see that.
I thought the same thing for too long.
Is MINEPLEX returning today? No, MINEPLEX is not. We're not putting the server out there today. No, we're not ready for that. But we are ready for people to understand what it is we're doing.
Positioning healing pylon. 3. Advancing upward. 1. Attackers incoming. Hold on to that.
That'd be so funny if I killed that kid. Alright. Damn. Ash Jaso? Wait, what is that? Genji Jaso with Alari. Oh, this might be a game for your boy. No, but they have Bapalari. Just kidding. They're never mind. They have the better heroes.
Targeting hostile.
How are you? Force drone. I'm not gonna chase that. It's too far. I can just kill this guy while they're killing him.
Enemy in sight. Thank you for the assistance. Hostile spotted.
Junk's going crazy. Alright, one in the back. I'm gonna go to Lari here, try to get some help. Oh, just kidding. Get you CC across the map. Yeah, I'm just gonna die here. It's just the best DPS here on the game in the support role.
Okay.
And I can't believe Jake said that duel is favorable to me, bruh. How this junk is just clowning my team. We can talk. I almost have copy. Yeah, we can go.
I'm gonna window here.
We're not going, I guess.
We can't go.
Yeah, there's one, I guess. Wait, what? How?
Kill jump, you alone.
Hey.
Junk's behind up top.
I've got your back.
Got him! Got him too!
I'm gonna window back up here. That's right.
I have copy. I don't know what I copy though. Probably maybe they're Bap or Junk or something. Or they're Alari.
Yeah, you could Alari dupe up there. They're watching cave, I think.
Yeah, there's 6 up here, but their DPS are here. I'm gonna go here.
That's a lot.
Let me heal. Alright. Nice. That's funny. That might get them actually.
Ooh.
It's a season like 1 angle.
I don't know about it.
That's like a season 1 new body defense when no one knew better.
Why, thank you.
That was my
We
favorite.
need Overwatch 1 back.
That's
Classic.
crazy. I'm talking about that in Discord right now.
How many man? 66 is better.
On God.
Nah, I was watching that whole thing, dude.
That was a lot of fun. I'll take this. Oh fuck.
Oh, you can just so flex this thing.
I just saw Immortal in there. You just want to play Hog though, that's what it is.
No. Nah, dude, you know it is like with 5v5, it's like with one tank being good, that's just gonna be the meta till next patch.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, it's so boring.
No, I actually agree with that.
Yep. It's only gonna get worse too, I think. We'll see.
Yo, Samito, do you have anything to do with the Kentucky lands this year?
I'm not gonna be as active, but I'm down. I'm still like gonna try to help them get people to go and like maybe.
Are you gonna like?
I might
shit
cast
talk
it.
this year or what?
You wanna what?
Shit talk.
Am I gonna shit talk what?
Just like you know. Yo, you guys fucking suck. Well,
No, I mean I'm not playing or anything, so.
we got DQ'd last year for talking too much shit.
At our tournament?
Yeah.
That's soft. Oh, you're Ball State, aren't you?
Yeah.
Oh, that shit's funny. Yeah, I think it was because your coaches were screaming at the fucking players.
What were they saying?
I don't know. I honestly like I was casting all day, so I didn't know like what was going on.
You know, the funny thing is the quote-unquote assistant coach we had there was just a production guy. Like,
Oh really? I mean, it was a fun tourney, man. I think it's gonna be bigger this fall.
Yeah, we're probably signing up. Oh, I just got points.
I'm trolling. You're been getting ult. Oh no. Ben just kited me the whole time. Is he in voice? Nope, he's not. That's right there now.
What?
Let's adapt.
You get them here.
I'm with you in that.
Nice. That should be a fun one. I think we're gonna try to get more good teams together this year.
0 to 1.
Yeah, it was a fun time last year. Yeah, that guy's on my team.
Prepare to attack.
It's a good facility too. It's in a good location is the thing.
Oh yeah, and the whiskey sours went fucking crazy.
Oh yeah. I went in Kentucky, right?
Yep. Yeah, I was screaming "Yikes, Jaybird" during the match. Poor guy.
The only problem I had is like I wish there was more like time for people to actually play. You know, I guess did we do like round robin at all?
I'm not sure.
Like I feel like I wish there was enough time to do like day ones like you round robin so everybody gets time to play, and then there's maybe like a single limb the next day or a double limb the next. I don't know. I guess you had online. I guess you had online.
Yeah, we did the qualifiers.
Yeah, did you feel like that was enough? Like just to, at least to get in the qualifiers? Because I don't know. There's just not enough time in a weekend.
I think there was like 10 rounds of qualifiers.
Yeah.
Greetings.
I feel like it was enough.
Greetings.
2, 1. Attack.
this falls is going to be absolutely insane because we play Alabama in football at home those days of the tournament.
Oh, that's crazy.
So the city's going to be going crazy. Honestly, don't know if I want to cast because I want to go to that game. Oh my goodness. You also think Sam would leave us to be a full-time caster? No. No way. Man, what's up, big dog?
I'm already rotating through left.
Dude, I hate every fucking support in this game too.
I mean, it's fair.
It's too much.
Get better, dog.
They do more damage than fucking DPS. No DPS can win a 1v1 in this game against the support.
Oh.
What do you mean, dude? It favors DPS. That's what everybody says.
Dude, the fucking LR doesn't even like support your team with her ult. It's literally just a damage ability. Sorry, I just went on a little rant.
I appreciate the choir.
Yeah.
That one, that one.
Well, they're all dead.
I got the Ang. Alright, easy. Let's see. Drink low up, keep the top on me.
Tap is one.
Wow,
holy shit, I beat a support in a duel. Barely.
Wait, that's crazy.
Alright, GG. Oh!
GG.
You see my bosses, guys? Which ones, Brotherhood? Now, this is actually really funny. Look at this.
Wait, this guy's different.
There they go.
All right, let's check it. Let's check out Spylo's vid.
And he says 66 was given no
Shaq,
shot
should I queue
balance.
up or
You know,
watch this video?
It was just impossible to balance with the tank rolls being that the way they were.
I kinda wanna
and
watch
just
this vid.
synergizing and overlapping. And this is going to be Avril's main point for the discussion. It's a lot easier to balance for casuals with 5v5. So Hawk then goes, okay, well, the game was made for 6v6. Double shield, the biggest issue whenever people talk about 6v6, was fixable. The maps were designed for 6v6. Queue times were not as fixed in 5v5. And that's something that's going to come up a couple more times. That's definitely one of the more contextual arguments that we don't really know what the queue time situation is. I feel like from anecdotal experience, the queue times are in general better in 5v5, but that just might be the game is healthier. I think we need more statistics behind the scenes. I don't think a gut instinct is really accurate because I think biases influence that gut instinct too much. So I don't think that this is an argument that we can really heavily rely off of for either side, really. He says a lot of tanking right now is about counterpicking. 5v5 matchmaking can't be fixed. Too much variability. Now, I want to talk about this really quickly right now because I think this is not a great point from Hawk. I think Hawk makes a lot of great points in this argument, but I don't think this is a good point because this is just the nature of having fewer people in a lobby means that there's going to be more variability. If you have 5 coins and you flip a coin 5 times, you're more likely to get 5 heads in a row than 6 heads in a row. There's just more variability. The more coins that you have, the more likely you're going to get a 50-50 split. Right? That's just the nature of variability and probability. So when you have fewer players in a lobby, it means that there's a lot more of a chance that things can go wrong. Now, is League of Legends 4v4?
Yeah, that's his point. That's his point, though. Like, it's that, yes, people are complaining more about, like, coin flip games and snowballs, right? And no matter what you do, like, he's not blaming the matchmaker. He's just saying exactly what you're saying. In that, like, yes, exactly. Like, it's more snowbally, and that's something that people are complaining about more.
I actually can't remember. Because you're going to notice that people talk really badly about League of Legends matchmaking and team play as well. And I don't think it's an accident that League of Legends is 4v4, I believe, which is even less than Overwatch. So if somebody has a bad game or a bad day or is just not feeling it or gets frustrated or tilted, it's a huge problem. So it's just the nature of going 6v6 to 5v5. It has really nothing to do with the tanking. And there's just as many good things about it as well. I think the ability to carry, you have more personal agency in the match, whereas a bad teammate feels heavier, but you also can be a lot stronger, if that makes any sense. So there's both in good and...
Yeah, yes, on paper. However, that's not actually true because one tank got removed, your ability to actually secure a kill on a player has gone down because there's more get out of jail free cards that are required for one tank. The tanks aren't killable anymore either. So your opportunity to actually get that kill is lower in this game than it would be in standard 6v6. He's right. But that actually means you have to secure the kill. But because everything has been buffed up, right, in terms of burst, the healing numbers, a tank's tankiness, the actual opponents on the other team that you can kill when they're making mistakes has gone down. So if you get a player on the tank role, for example, who's just really, really bad, that sticks out more.
And
that makes sense
about that. I think it's just kind of a moot point, right?
But he's not wrong that it's harder to argue for. It's definitely harder to argue for, and it was not our focus point. The main focus point of our argument was to really just look at the tank role because that's the most obvious sore loser and argue that. But I think that this is actually very arguable.
Opening statement, he says, working together in 6v6 felt great, but the reality was that tank role was still very limited. Only certain tank combos that worked. It's GG if you get Ryan Diva, Orisa Sig, and the enemy team gets it, and you get like Ryan Hogg or Orisa Zarya. 5v5 can balance for individual heroes a little bit easier. And this is going to be Jake's main thing, is that it's going to be more about the fact that there are certain combos that we always have these rose-colored glasses where like, oh, these combos were great. But it's like, what was the percentage of times where we actually got those combos? And actually it was very bad if you didn't get the combos. The spike of power and the valley of power, of like how low you could get, was like super, like a Ryan Diva in Brawl versus a Ryan Hogg. It was terrible if you were the poor Ryan player with the Hogg. Like you just didn't have a lot of options. And I think that's Jake's main point. So 12 minutes in, Hawk says support combos are just as strong as tank combos. Bap Brig, Bap Lucio, Bap Zen, Brig, Zen, all those combos are just as strong as tank. Avril and Jank disagree. Hawk says new supports are the off-tank role. So in other words, when we talk about the support passive and some of the power creep that we see in the supports, not necessarily sustain, but through the support power, he says it's to compensate for the lack of off-tank to hold space or peel. Basically, all the supports need the ability to duel and live. And that's something that's going to come up a lot from Samito as well, where we are questioning how powerful, what is a good spike for supports in terms of power that allows them to be able to keep themselves alive, support, and be able to duel DPS comfortably, versus what makes them oppressive and makes the DPS role feel kind of worthless. The supports are just better DPS.
Those videos are so poorly made. Sorry, not sorry. I disagree. I think that this is the best style of way to react, because instead he's just going to have to be watching. The video's going to go on forever. He has got a great Spark Notes here, and he's just going one by one and covering it in a reasonable amount of time. I completely disagree with you. This is a better way to do it than reacting.
Really hate. Jake says no, other combos were really... Samito says it's only double shield that people really, really hate. Jake says no, other combos were really bad as well. Winston, Diva, Zarya, not a lot of counterplay for those. As a supporter DPS player, it's very easy to take space, with the Diva compensating for the Winston strengths. You have to pick synergy tanks only as well, Jake says. That like
people in casual ranks
Winston
did not
Hogg.
do that.
My Hogg doesn't bring enough to the table to compensate for the lack of the Diva. Hawk says you could win 1v1 versus tanks as well. So if you're a DPS or a support player, you could actually kill certain tanks in certain situations. Jake says no. Avril says it doesn't matter because two tanks, basically it was never a 1v1 versus a tank. There's always a secondary tank or somebody else involved. So it's a moot point. So who cares? Jake's going to go on to say at 2030, current tank situations are not as bad as the tank situations in Overwatch 1. So as bad as it is right now, it could be a lot worse. Samito, basically support combos reduce the counterability of certain tank combos. In other words, if I go Bat Brig, it's a lot harder to counter Bat Brig than it is a Bat Zen. A Bat Zen, I can dive. A Bat Brig, I can't dive while still having the spam. Now, the irony of this is that it's the same argument with Winston, where you can't counter Winston if he plays with the Diva or if he plays with the Zarya. How many of you guys remember Ball with Zarya and 2 spam comps? You literally could not stop the Ball from doing whatever you want because he got bubbles. So the problem is that, this is my point here, it feels a little bit like he said, she said at the moment. We're talking about like, oh, this support combo is really OP, or this tank combo is really OP, therefore that role is broken.
The difference is, between the two, the supports didn't have to execute and the tanks did. It's much harder to properly execute a tank combo than it was a support combo, because Brig and Bap could just exist in the places and their kits did everything for them and they weren't at risk. But the tanks actually had to have a drop off, and that it required great timing, great positioning. And they generally, if they were going to play Zarya Ball, they would be at risk because their health pools are lower. So yeah, like the synergies could be really strong, but the actual requirements to execute them were significantly higher than the problems that the supports created.
Basically the same points are being made versus each other at the same time. Now we're going to kind of elaborate on this argument later on in the discussion. Where is it? Brig's the problem, but Riss was the problem.
But he's not wrong. Like, we didn't do a great job of going into like the actual issues of it. Because again, like for us, like for our approach to the debate was not to get into the debate between supports and tanks. Like, we didn't feel as though we had to argue that. Like, I think it's pretty plain and simple that playing tank in this game is not nearly as fun, and that's where the big problems come in, because that was the role that was removed, right? That's where it's going to be the most obvious that 5v5 fell off. So we wanted to really focus on the tank combos. We could argue all this, but we felt like we had the big winner. Like, if we could argue, like as Spilo says, this is a lot of he said, she said, and it's not as convincing. So you could just argue the neutral here. As long as we prove and really show people and bring up the ideas of how the tank role has just become even worse in this game, we could argue the neutral here and still win the debate. Right? That was our approach. That's what I told Hawk we should do. Because we could argue all this, and I do believe the supports were worse than the tank, and I think there's a lot of things that you could say in previous Overwatch to do that. But it gets off topic, right? And we really wanted to hammer home the topic of, hey, playing tank is worse in this game. It is worse in this format, and this is what it caused. This is too much of the past. Like, this doesn't really matter as much as what's here and now.
Basically, we'll talk more about that in a little bit, but stay focused on that point, because we're going to be coming back to that one very soon. So Avril says that tank synergy is the most important thing to play about in Overwatch 1. Hawk says it's the same with support. We've talked about this, right? Hawk says some tanks feel useless or limited with options. Current Overwatch 2 Diva, current Overwatch 2 Zarya. They have aspects of the kit that haven't aged as well, whether it's their ultimate or the ability to bubble somebody else going in aggressively when, if you don't have the right DPS to go in aggressively, like who do you bubble? And there's a lot of pressure, individual pressure of being a solo tank. Where you as an individual, all the pressure's on you to perform.
I saw this comment a ton from casual players. A lot of casual players don't like playing tank, not only for the limit, like how you're limited, but be solo tanking is just too much pressure for them, and they just don't want to do it.
Versus the enemy tank, and a lot.
I never thought about
like
that,
So,
to be honest.
Samito says the 6v6 role queue wasn't around long enough before Overwatch 1 went dark balance-wise, so we never really got a chance to see like what it could have been. And I think that's the main point from both Samito and Hawk, is that they like Overwatch 1 better, 66 better for certain aspects, which we've kind of gone through and will continue to go through. And we never really know like what could have happened with proper balancing. And I think that's a fair point. Unfortunately, it's not something that we're ever really going to know. And that's a point for the 5v5. We'll talk about that one down the road. Shooting Fortified Orisa is just as bad as shooting Shield, Samito and Hawk. Samito actually dials back on this one a little bit later and says, yeah, I probably would rather shoot a Fortified Orisa than a Shield, but it's still not fun. In order to keep tanks alive, they now have the survivability, essentially, of double tanks. Jake says you can actually avoid Orisa now. But in Overwatch 1, you couldn't avoid the tank trade near as much. In other words, when I'm playing versus double shield, it's not like I can take a flank or an angle as a DPS support. I'm going to run into the other tank. And so I eventually have to support the tank trade. There's not that option to avoid that if I don't want to. You can't make as many...
And that's because Bat, Brig, Orisa, and Sigma were fundamentally broken characters that never got addressed. You absolutely could do that against heroes that were not Bat, Brig, Orisa, and Sigma. The problem was the DLC heroes. Like the amount of times that like players like, I don't know, who used to dumpster us in scrims, like who was like Tayo on Third Impact, like Aspire in Contenders, a ton of these like super flare Hydrant, even like a ton of these flanky like pro hit scan players back in the day, like in the rush metas, they would constantly flank his cast and get a quick pick before the diva could react, right, or take an angle. Like Third Impact was really good at that. So that happened all the time in Overwatch 1 and 6v6. It just didn't happen as much in Double Shield because every single hero in the game was unkillable. They had 4 tanks on the field, right, that could heal and do damage, right? So that's kind of what happened there.
Plays without directly contributing to the tank trade like you did in Overwatch 1. So in Overwatch 2, I actually have that flexibility to avoid that. Jake feels like it's still fun, even if not optimized tank synergy and rank. In other words, that there's more flexibility with what are bad and good compositions in Overwatch 2, whereas in Overwatch 1, even simply having a low heal composition in Overwatch 2 is a lot less of a shortcoming than it was in Overwatch 1, where if you were running Zenyatta Lucio, you can actually run that in Overwatch 2 and win many, many, many more circumstances than you can in Overwatch 1. Samito says that tanks were killable. It's worse to be shooting a tank now. So while it's a lot easier to avoid the Orisa, if you do run into the Orisa in current situation, it's a lot harder to kill the Orisa than it is in Overwatch 2. And I think this is a good point. So if you can avoid the tank trade, Overwatch 2 is better. If you can't avoid the tank trade, then Overwatch 1 might be better because the tanks in Overwatch 2 aren't really near as killable. Jake says tank synergies were more frustrating in Overwatch, or lack of tank synergies. Hawk says a lot of things about a tank that a tank can't do or can't deal with. Jake says it's a game problem of helplessness, not 5v5 or 6v6. Sam says it forces DPS to take more responsibility to counter now. And I think that's, again, a very fair point, but there isn't really to me, this is like perfectly like split down the middle. It's like, yes, there's more situations that you have to directly fix yourself, but this is my point here. It's a balance of individual responsibility. You having to be responsible for doing things as a tank or as a DPS, whether it's countering the enemy Widow or dealing with the enemy Sombra or dealing with the enemy Orisa. I mean, there's one fewer body to deal with that, one fewer tank to deal with that. So that's just the balance of individual responsibility. It's a double-edged sword. It's both a good and a bad thing, and I don't really think that we can objectively say which variation is better.
Here's why you can say 6v6 was better in this sense. What's so beautiful about Overwatch and what made it win Game of the Year was the freedom. And as time has gone on, the freedom of picking and doing whatever you want and having all kinds of options, Overwatch has done nothing but reduce that freedom over the years, right? In some circumstances, it was good. In some circumstances, it was too much. I think hero limits were a very reasonable and good thing for the game. The game was too wacky. It didn't have enough structure, right? Open queue to roll queue allowed for more consistent quality matches to come up, though the queue times were a sacrifice. I've always been pro roll queue. I'm willing to consider an open queue argument, right? Like for open queue once again. I'm not saying it should, that's what I think right now. It's not what I think right now, but I'm willing to consider the argument. But now, going from 6v6 to 5v5, I think 6v6 roll queue was the perfect sweet spot of still allowing that freedom to pick what you want and play how you want. But when you go to 5v5, you are now way more forced and you lose a ton of that freedom, especially in the tank role. And when the game is forcing you to do more things, it takes away what was beautiful about Overwatch that attracted people to the game, that made it win Game of the Year. That freedom to do what you want and play how you want. But so many play styles got removed, and now it's trickled into the other roles from removing that tank, where you're even more one-dimensional. You're more forced to say, you have to do it this way. And I think we've exited the Goldilocks zone of the perfect balance of freedom of choice and actually being forced to play the game in a certain way. And 5v5 just went a little outside of that zone to actually, allow that type of freedom to be picked. And that's why, again, where does it stop, right? Because you're going to continue to see this happen more and more in 5v5, and there's no way to balance that back into the game. You can't balance that back into the game. What's going to end up happening in 5v5 is you just have to keep power creeping one tank to be good, right? And that's just not going to stop. That freedom can't come back in a 5v5 format. There's just no way.
Jake says the game is balanced because counter picking is viable. I couldn't quite understand his point here. Is like the fact that you can counter pick, that it means the game is relatively balanced. You can't just play on one character. I think it makes sense, but it didn't have as much relevance in the discussion. He says more comp variety. Hawk says that not that much variety, more of a balance issue. Also, you can feel helpless more often in 5v5. Avril says that tank was a huge issue in 6v6 as well. People complained about tank arguably even more in Overwatch 1. The tanking in Overwatch 1 felt just as bad, if not worse, than Overwatch 2. He says that we have a bit of a recency bias where everyone's talking about Sleep Dart and Discord and Hack, yes, but those things were also in Overwatch 1.
Nobody complained about playing Reinhardt. Nobody complained about playing Zarya, right? The DLC heroes were the only ones being complained about. People loved playing the classical heroes. They still do, and the pick rates nowadays really showcase that. The reason why people complain about playing tank in Overwatch 1 is because the new boring, brain-dead, easy, brain-dead, absolute glue-eating heroes like Brigitte, like BAP, and all the immos and the tankiness they gave supports ruined playing tank. The DLC heroes ruined playing tank because when you make the support role incredibly tanky and have all the immos, the role it punished the most was not the DPS heroes, it was the tanks.
And while there was...
It was the tanks like Ryan and Zarya who didn't have infinite resources, two of the highest pick rate heroes in all of Overwatch history, to actually go brawl and do anything their kits were designed to do against these characters because they were brawl tanks that were worse at brawl than the bunker poke tanks.
One more warm body to take that heat away from us. Tanks, people still didn't play tank in Overwatch 1. So clearly it was bad enough
they
to
would
justify, it was bad
should
enough
the
to
heroes they
justify
liked
questioning
actually been
whether it was
viable and
actually
remotely
better.
enjoyable.
Ox's 5v5 is way more chaotic, less predictable because people have bad days. We talked about this. Having 5 people instead of 6 people means that there's a lot more variance in your matchmaking. Jake says hero design of dynamics because of 5v5 has helped so that there's less. If you go in with the Symmetra OTP in Overwatch 1, you're screwed if you're on the wrong map or the wrong comp. In Symmetra, Overwatch 2, with Symmetra, there's a lot more variety. Now, my point on that is I agree with Jake. This is something I've been talking about a lot recently. However, I don't think that's necessarily something that they could not have done with 2 tanks, to be perfectly fair. I think that, giving Symmetra more dynamics is something that we immediately tie to Overwatch 2, 5v5, but there's nothing inherent about 5v5 that demands that, if that makes any sense. Like, they could have left Symmetra exactly as she is, and she would have been a lot less effective because there's one fewer tank to shoot. So
Sim, you said the first year I watched the free etc., but that was also when the original players much was the game. Of course, the option felt more limited as players learned more. No. 5v5 objectively limits what you can do. Right? Yes, players learn more, but in your especially for casual players, like at the high level play, you could argue that, but for 99% of the player base, and even then, I don't even think that's true for high level play. But for 99% of the player base, like there were people who were plat for 36 seasons. They never learned the game. They never learned how to actually execute on that. Right? So to actually execute on those counters and the meta, so to speak, you'd have to be a player good enough, capable to actually execute on that, which isn't consistent in low-level play. But 5v5 forcibly makes you do that no matter what your rank is throughout the entire ranks. You lost more.
I think it kind of gives the devs a kick in the pants, but they could have done that with 6v6 as well. Samito says support strength is really hurting the DPS role right now. And I think that's a fair point. That's something that's going to come up again a little bit later, so stay tuned. Avril says lack of tank desire has always been a problem in 6v6. Queue time with support may result with new supports and content. So tank has always been a problem. People don't want to play tank. And we're going to talk more about why that might be. Jake has some good guesses.
Because they didn't design fun tank heroes. They designed, like, look at the tanks that came out. All 3 tanks they put out in Overwatch 1 were niche hero picks that didn't apply to the fun playstyle of the original tank heroes that have the highest pick rate of the entire role. They designed boring characters. If Junker Queen had come out in Overwatch 1, way more people would have picked it, right? Orisa is niche and boring. Ball is an incredibly niche pick, right? Like, it's not like Ball's skill sets are unique, right? I think Ball could have been fine, right? But then the next tank they put out is Sigma, right? The tanks they were putting out didn't match the style of play like Junker Queens does now, who was a great addition to the game. Like even Doomfist would be, right? They just didn't design fun heroes. They drove people away from the role, right? That's really, if you look at what they did, that's what happened. They just went like 0.5 for 3 on tanks. Right? That's just what happened. That's why no one wanted to play the role. Like back in the original days of the game, you could get a Rhine player. You could get a Hog player. You could get Zaryas all the time. You could get Divas all the time. Diva's one of the highest pick rate heroes in the game, right? People will play those heroes, but the new tanks they added didn't fit that design style. They tried to be too different. They gave some of them too much. And those boring tanks that people didn't like ended up overshadowing the original ones that people loved in the meta. And that's not a rewarding experience. What's the point of playing a role that doesn't adequately reward you and is not fun as you go up the learning curve? That's what was lost sight of in Overwatch 1 in terms of tank design.
To that a little bit later. Hawk says lots of tank designs age really poorly in 5v5. Super broken, super bad. Supports are much better generalists than tanks. Fewer weaknesses. In other words, support rework, support changes have much more encouraged supports to be a lot more dynamic in terms of just heal botting or in terms of doing one or two things.
Tank Doom and Junker Queen
they have a
changed
lot more
that.
dynamics. They feel like the tanks have not caught up with that dynamics as much, which I agree with and is one of the biggest points about what is our solution if we're going to be sticking with 5v5. Avril agrees for balance perspective. We can bounce for that. Hawk says that these reworks are going to take forever, though. And this is my point, though. Is like, who cares if they're going to take forever? I mean, I care, but it's not like 6v6 is going to be any closer of a change, because if we go back to 6v6, we're still going to need reworks, right? So
that's not true. That's not true. That's not true, because the formatting and the numbers for 6v6 are all there. There's a 7-year history of 6v. There's a 6-year history of 6v6. There's also precedent for other games going back in the company, because Black Ops 4 tried to go to 5v5 and then they didn't like it, and then they reverted to 6v6 for the next game in W 2019. So there is a precedent. It would be faster for 6v6 because those number values are all there, and it's a better format. So the idea that it's harder to do it for 6v6 is not true. It's easier. You have to completely redesign Roadhog. You might have to completely redesign heroes like Ball, right? You don't have to do that if you go back to 6v6. There is more work to do to get most of the cast ready for 5v5 than there is to take the game back to 6v6, if that's the argument. That's not true. That's not true at all. Because they're just adding another player, you don't need to change shit. That's not the point. I'm not saying that it's as easy to change Overwatch back as it is Call of Duty. I'm saying there's precedent for a game doing it. Because he says it's not like 6v6 is going to happen. No, it is. It is possible, because it has happened. Right? That's not the argument. Again, that's a straw man argument. Again,
I think
that's all people who like 5v5 do.
Where he's
they take a point, put words into the argument, in the argument's mouth that nobody said, and be like, no, but see, you said that. No, that nobody said that. That's not what we said. That's how you perceive what we said. That's not what we actually said.
Critiques of this 5v5 thing with the reworks, it applies to 6v6 just as much, if not even more so. So what's the point, right?
That's not true.
We have to make the best that we're at right now.
That's not
Jake
true.
says Junker Queen, the design of Junker Queen, a really fun character, could never existed because tank combos made stuff like that super busted potentially when supported or supporting somebody else. Something with speed, shout. The dynamics of tank in Overwatch 2 are possible because you don't have to be as limited with Overwatch 1 because you're scared of, oh no, what could Junker Queen do with a Rhine? Or what could Junker Queen do with a Zarya bubble? We don't have to ask those questions because it's no longer a problem. And you notice that a lot of the discussion goes around the off-tank ability to support a different tank. Not just off-tank, I think the idea of a shield being stackable with somebody else's defensive utility is really important, but basically stacking defensive or enabling utility is like a big theme here. Hawk thinks D.Va and Ball cannot be fixed fundamentally. That was one I don't necessarily agree with, but it is a good point that there are aspects of the character that
they're limited.
Just don't feel super good in Overwatch 2. Like the peel mindset of a D.Va with Matrix. Like Matrix is used a lot more offensively now, but it doesn't feel as good of an ability for that. Ball, right? Solo isolation, big AoE slams, things that you don't get as much in Overwatch 2, or if you do, it's super broken. So how do you balance those things? And I do think that, like, if you are a 5v5 advocate, I'm going to be honest, I do think 5v5 is just reasonably the way to go. Not because I think 5v5 is necessarily inherently better, just because I think it's stupid to think that 6v6 is ever going to be coming back. Like, let's be honest here, guys. So we need to take what we were given and make the best of it.
Listen, they've already come out and said that player traction is slowing down massively, right? There is precedent with Black Ops 4 making the exact same decision for their multiplayer shooter that's not a search and destroy mode, and it being received negatively. Like, the idea that we can't go back to 6v6, I think, is not true. At the end of the day, if the consumer responds negatively, which a lot of people are, and Overwatch 2 is losing a lot of traction, I think that 6v6 will be better received than 5v5 would be. The idea that we can't go back is preposterous. That's just not true. especially with them having new owners and Microsoft, you never know what's going to happen. Especially if the consumer and the downward trend continues to happen, and the game and the problems in this game that were caused by 5v5 have lost the classic Overwatch player. Also, when you use site COD as a precedent for reversing formats and counter video games, something hard to balance. You saying that COD only has to add a player is pointing out your disanalogous point. No, no, that's bullshit. No, I'm not saying the games are the same. That's not the point. The point is saying that Activision Blizzard is infamous for making change for the sake of change for a new game. Every year they crank out a Call of Duty, and Overwatch 2 fell for that same concept, and they tried to execute it for Overwatch 2, and they failed. This is the whole point. This is what people complained about with Activision Blizzard, and that they're trying to make a new game for the sake of change, to market it as a new game to get more sales. So they change things all the time. They try these changes. If they work, they keep them. If they don't, they don't. Right? That's the point. I'm not saying Overwatch is the same as Call of Duty. That's not the point. The entire point I'm making is that there's a precedent of another game in the company that made a change for the sake of change, reverting that change because it wasn't well received. That's the entire point. It doesn't matter if they're the same game or not. They're in the same genre. They are similar. They're within the realm, right? It's not a disingenuous point or a disanalogous point or whatever you said. It's an objective truth that happened. It happened. That's the point. I'm not saying Overwatch is like Call of Duty or anything like that. They're shooter games run by the same company who is infamous for this business model. Shit, I think they're more likely to change it just to spice up the game to market Overwatch 3. Who knows? It's Activision Blizzard.
But I do think that we need to be thinking really creatively about like what needs to change with D.Va and Bald, and like how do
the idea that Microsoft can't do something if they wanted to is just preposterous too.
Adjust these heroes to actually match the Overwatch 2 dynamic a lot better. Avril thinks the gap between optimal tank and suboptimal tank biggest issue with Overwatch 1. We talked about this. Zarya, Reinhawk. How on earth do you win with Reinhawk? And you guys can come up with answers potentially, but I can tell you from like a Diamond Masters GM Plus lobbies, maybe things are differently in lower ranks, but it's almost impossible to make that work. And that's a pretty large percentage.
How do you win with Hog on Havana in Overwatch 2 when it's the only tank you get and you still get that Hog player? How do you win with Junker Queen on any of the poke maps? These people are still going to pick these heroes that are inoptimal in bad situations in Overwatch 2. And the difference is now you have even less of a chance because when these hard counters exist, because tanks are going to hard counter each other in 5v5 more than they did in 6v6. How do you do it with only one tank that's underperforming? Because as you said earlier, Spilo, the variables for the matchmaker and the coin flips, if there's more, you're more likely to get that 50-50. The odds of you being able to win with that inoptimal tank pick in 5v5 in the wrong situation are lower than if you had a second take to at least try to mitigate that in 6v6. The idea that, and previously in Overwatch 1, these tanks at least had to execute their kits to get the counter off. Aside from the brain dead double shield comps. Like they at least had to execute the counter. They had to execute their synergies properly. Now, all those base abilities and those base counters are just on the kit by default, making it affect every rank instead of just the high ranks. And the supports have these insane utilities to bail those tanks out even more that are more accessible by default to most of the player base. You have taken that problem that you are complaining about, and instead of having it only be a problem to the niche top-end players that actually have to execute, you've made it a global problem for the entire player base, and you can't fix it. I'm glad they're bringing up this point. They're proving 5v5's flaws correct. They're showing exactly why 6v6 is better, but they just don't understand they're arguing that yet. You can't get rid of it because these people are going to pick these heroes no matter what. That is what we've learned in Overwatch's lifespan, and it's just going to hurt more when it happens in 5v5, and now it happens to every rank in the game.
Is with the player base, even though it is in the higher player base, that was just not able to make that function. And that's the problem, and that's something that Jake talks about as well, is that like you have certain tank combos that worked really, really well together, potentially broken, and then you had combos that were so bad that it was not even worth doing, and that's just not something that any other role, at least to the extent tank has to deal with. And that's the problem, is that level of variance led to a really bad game experience. Not to mention a balancing nightmare.
Bap and Brig.
Jang thinks picking Hog feels...
Bap and Brig are what led to a terrible game experience. AoE healing being out of control led to a terrible game experience. Double shield and the tank design never being properly addressed and the game being abandoned is what led to a terrible experience. These are not 6v6 issues. These are game design and game philosophy issues that never got fixed because they were forced to go work on a new game.
Almost more winnable now than a suboptimal tank synergy matchup in Overwatch 1. Interesting. Samito thinks the average tank experience right now is actually worse, but he says more anecdotal. He says tank trading is more common, but the ability to cover weaknesses in Overwatch 1, it was
that mean?
what allowed
What did I mean by tank trading?
things to go a little bit better. Avril says that there was no covering of weaknesses in Overwatch 1 if your optimal tank situation was not there. So in other words, it doesn't matter. You didn't have your weaknesses covered as a Reinhardt if you didn't have a Zarya or a Diva, or even a Sigma, right? Like you didn't. It's not like,
That's
oh,
not
you're
true.
covering my weaknesses. That there was no covering of weaknesses. Avril and Jake think support power needs.
I don't think in low ranks that's really true. It's like these kids weren't playing optimally, and just by having a second tank around to soak up damage in general, like you don't have to play a tank optimally to get shot at. In fact, most of these kids were probably fucking feeding and getting shot at, and that still took weight off the player. Like having that second tank there just to get shot at the skill floor just makes the game more forgiving no matter what for tank players and your average players out there. No matter what, because they're getting shot at, they're soaking up damage.
And can be scaled back. Samito Hawk are a little bit more skeptical that they can actually find that pendulum balance.
That's a skill floor thing, and most of the debate that to be fair to you guys, my three co-hosts, I guess, on this debate did not do a great job of actually talking about the low rank player experience. Most of the talk was about the skill ceiling, and I really wanted to try to draw it to the skill floor because that's where it lost the most, was at the skill floor.
So Jake says support queues may also be because how fun, like long support queues may not just because support's broken, because how fun support is right now with the new hero designs, with Iliari, with Kiriko.
I've done enough on ranked GMs to see it.
Actually making him a little bit more, not rework, but his buffs making him a little bit more enjoyable. Support's a pretty fun role right now. And I think that's something that's hard to argue with, but it's hard to say that that's a problem so much as that other roles or other heroes may need to be caught up to speed. We're also coming off of 3 support characters.
Exactly. Now in 5v5, you have to buff. You're going to continuously have to be buffing things into the meta, even more than in 6v6. You can't find an organic way to get different characters to get played. It'll never stop. And the exact same thing that made people want to stop playing Overwatch 1 is going to happen in Overwatch 2 and 5v5, but even more. The original core cast that people love to play are going to become more and more obsolete. And you're going to have this endless cycle of having to continuously buff things more and more and more to get them in the meta and get them playable and make them feel good. This requires a higher degree of balanced team capabilities, which has frankly been pointed out to be the shortcoming of Overwatch's lifespan. And in 5v5, it puts even more demand on these patches to be excellent. There's less margin for error. There's less margin for organic playstyles and organic characters and comps to get played, which could alienate the original player base even more, which is what you saw happen in the tank role. That's the big thing that happened, because the role people didn't want to play back in the day was support. It used to be support, especially in the Moth meta. You couldn't find support players in rank, but you could find Rhine players. You could always find a Rhine player. You could always find a Diva player. You saw those way more consistently than support players back in the day, especially when like heroes like Mercy ended up being better, right?
Not back to back, but 3 out of 5 of the last characters. If I'm doing my math right, I think Ramatra. Ramatra. Actually, 3 out of the last 4, maybe.
You feel that didn't happen in League? I think League is very different.
But have been support. So
League does have a 100+ character roster, and the mechanics of a shooter game are very different. I think it's tough to compare that.
Ram Marissa is more current.
Honestly, I haven't played enough League to tell you.
In Overwatch 1 besides double shield. Samito thinks dynamics is really missing in the Overwatch 2 tank. Jake says Overwatch 1 couldn't have fixed the anti-synergy tanks like Hog, Zarya. Would have required rework tanks that don't have the synergy support combos.
You have to do the same thing now, but more.
And Samito says 1 tank for 11 tanks is tough to balance. So in other words, some different thoughts in there. One of the things that Samito brings up is that it's harder to balance. He thinks it's harder to balance when you play only 1 tank, but you can pick 11 different tanks. So I think it's kind of hard to like really judge whether that's the case or not, but it's an interesting point.
No, it's not. That's statistically true. Spilo, you brought up numbers earlier, right? And I forget, chat, there was a couple stat things that he brought up. I forget what subject matter was. Maybe it was for the matchmaker. Maybe it was for other things. Statistically speaking, forget like the anti-synergies, right? This is objectively true. Now, instead of competing to be pickable for the tank role with maybe one or two other characters of your archetype, you now are going to be forced to compete with the entire cast for that spot, forcing rock, paper, scissors to happen. Forcibly removing that freedom, right? It doesn't matter like how you feel about it. It doesn't matter whether you think it's true or not. That is a statistical fact. That is irrefutable. You are now competing to get picked in that spot with 11 other heroes, and that number is only going to get higher and higher and higher and higher. That might be worse than the DPS role. DPS roles have the most heroes. How many DPS heroes are in the game? And because there's a second DPS that you can play with, you have way more freedom to fill into the role. But if there was only one DPS and you picked Junkrat and they had Pharah, you had to swap no matter what. You were going to get forced to swap to that counter even more if you were the only DPS character that got picked. 17? 18? Yeah, so this is true. Tank is the most competitive role for a pick. Do you guys see what I'm saying on that? Like if they removed one DPS from the game and left two tanks, right? And they picked Pharah and you're a Junkrat player. If you had a second DPS that could pick the hit scan, you could still play Junkrat and still win the game. But if you stay Junkrat as the only DPS in the game, you are now hard countered and you are forced to switch. That is what's happened in the tank role. And that forces this to happen in lower ranked play where that wasn't the case. The format forces the players to play the game in a certain way. Way more in this game than it did in Overwatch 1. And then they said, quote, we don't want to force people to swap heroes in Overwatch 2, but the format changes they made do force that. Again, they just don't understand what these format changes did. And there's no way to really know that before it happens, to be fair, right? But it's very clear that it's happening now. Like what 5v5 force directly goes, can someone, guys, can you find me the quotes of them saying we don't want to force people to swap heroes in Overwatch 2? Can you find me quotes of them saying that and put that in my Discord? Because what 5v5 has made happen is, and their keeping ult charge thing, is it's enabled people to, it's enabled the force swaps even more. It's enabled the counterplay. I don't think I was happy playing Overwatch 1. I'm not going to lie to you. At least at the end. Supports can also deal with Pharah. That's not the point, though. Like, that's not the point. This is hypothetical, right? Like, in the tank role, the tanks have to deal with the other tank, and the supports do too, I guess, to a degree. But you'd still have to switch. That's just a random example, guys. I remember that them saying with 5v5 it allowed more comp diversity. Can you guys go find all that? Because that's objectively wrong. Completely wrong.
Imagine if we went solo support. Imagine if we removed a support role. How broken would we need to make Lucio to compensate for the solo support role? I think that's an interesting point as well. Avril says tank isn't unique. And this, by the way, this goes back to his point that like current solo tanks are like super tanky, like super hard to kill to compensate. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that point because I think tanks already started from a standpoint of being survivable to an extent. And so we just had to kind of toy with that. But it is an interesting point. Avril says tank is unique in that stacking feels exponentially powerful. For DPS, for supports, not as potent. For tanks, though, crazy. I mean, obviously, the thing about roll queue was created because of that. And if you ignore goats and Briggs and Mercy, there has never really been a more than 2 support meta. Both of those were enabled by Brig. Now, beyond that, in terms of tank stacking, if we ignore goats, tank stacking has been a very popular strategy. 3 tanks, 4 tanks. I mean, even quad tank before Overwatch League was even a thing was a very powerful composition that leveraged the survivability and beef essentially that tanks provide, and the synergy of having something that can have both bubble and a matrix and a shield. It's a fundamental map control issue, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
That wasn't always true. You're right. It was a strategy in the game in open queue, and let's take this argument to open queue for a minute. The reason why stacking tanks was never hard meta, aside from goats, and 2 metas, there was a quad tank comp that Fusion used to run with Lucio Moira. What do you think changed, chat, that allowed for these tank comps to grow in power level? What was the nuclear deterrent to stop teams from running these tanky BS gimmick comps? Do you want to know what it was? If you ran these tank comps originally, aside from when they super buffed D.Va and Hog was broken in Season 3 of Overwatch 1, there wasn't enough healing to heal all those health pools. Do you know what changed? The design of supports. Jeff Kaplan and Jeff Goodman's fundamentally flawed game design model to try to make the game easier for more players that destroyed what made this game great by adding brain dead, easy to use AoE healing that could heal the entire team at once. Moira and Brigitte. The support design and the game design ideology of Overwatch 1's Team 4 destroyed the balance of the game. And to this day, that damage has not been undone. Brigitte has not been changed. They've just changed the format to make those things less valuable instead of actually changing the core issue. And because they changed the format, it damaged the original game and the original heroes that people fell in love with. Zarya is limited, right? You could argue Hog. You could argue D.Va's more limited now. Reinhardt's more limited now because he doesn't have the second tank to work with. Heroes like Genji, fan favorite heroes, hard countered by glue-eating supports. You could eat glue you could be rubbing glue in your ears and not have a headset on, and Brig and Moira will still play the game for you. Countless immortality and get out of jail free cards. The list goes on. Instead of actually addressing the core issue of how these heroes were designed and not buffing every support ult in the game, because the other counter back in the day in open queue to these big tanky comps was that, well, if you run these big tanky comps, the DPS heroes are going to get their ults much faster, and the DPS ults will overwhelm the tanky brawly comp. That was until, which by the way, Goats was not hard meta after Brig came out initially, because the snipers and the DPS heroes were all very good. Hanzo, Widow, Pharah, Junkrat. You could run these big boom comps that build their ults and beat these comps through the ult mirror, right? That was until Blizzard, in all their brilliance, decided to buff every support ult in the game. Beat Drop used to not survive, allow the team to survive Grav Dragon. You had to be running Zenyatta and Transcendence to be able to survive the Grav Dragon. You had to pick the proper picks to counter the ults, right? That's what you had to do. So if you ran Lucio Moira, you would just lose the Grav Dragon. You would lose with the Dragon Strike. You'd always lose somebody. But then they doubled the health of Sound Barrier, making it just survive the Junkrat Riptire, all these other things, allowing the brawly speed comp of these tanks not only to win in the mid fight, but also win the ult fight. They buffed Coalescence. They buffed Nano. They buffed every support ult in the game. So you lose the nuclear deterrent. The only thing that stopped these comps from being able to be run as they added more AoE healing, they just took out of the game, which forced Goats. And they never backtracked. They never backtracked on that. That's what happened. And you can go look back at the patch notes and the metas that were being played, because Sombra Doomfist was what was being scrimmed right before Goats became hard meta. Because the support ults weren't busted.
There's an inherent problem of beef and tank synergies. Right. Okay.
And if tank synergies were more powerful than support synergies in open queue, explain to me why in Goats, the pinnacle of the tanky tank meta, oh, tanks are too broken. Explain to me this. Why did the comp that emerged as a new meta in the Goats meta that beat the best Goats team to ever exist, the San Francisco Shock, the only team who ever beat them really on Goats after they mastered the meta? were the Houston Outlaws, who dropped a tank and put Dante on Sombra. And they ran 3 supports, 2 tanks, 1 Sombra, and beat the best GOATS team to ever play the game. And they dropped a tank, not a support. And we want to say the tank synergies were the most oppressive thing in the game? Then why did dropping a tank beat the tank comp? Because the supports and the support stacking was more oppressive than the tank stacking. Because the supports did it inherently, passively, with Inspire, with Moira, with BAP. These abilities all did it for them, and they didn't have to execute, and ultimately the AoE healing was more broken than tank synergies ever were, and how the meta played out proved that. You can't argue that. Why did Sombra Goats win then? Why did the Sombra Goats team start beating the best Goats teams in the world? Explain that to me, if the tank comps and the tanks were the reason why that comp exists.
I mean, even think about like Overwatch 2 with like
why was every single meta not hard triple quad tank, if that was the case?
Right? People were playing tanks. Now, obviously, tanks were really, really strong, but then they had to not only nerf tanks in open queue, but they actually had to nerf tanks to points to where they were even weaker than they were in Overwatch 1. Now, you could be like, well, duh, because Overwatch 2 tanks are super...
And because they nerfed all the original cast, because they refused to address Brigitte and the supports and the AoE healing that broke the game, after we finally went to role queue, Orisa and Sigma dominated that format the entirety of its existence. Aside for one time where they super buffed D.Va and Rein D.Va became meta. One time, and then they had to nerf D.Va because they buffed her up to Orisa's level. Because you were constantly nerfing the wrong things and you refused to address AoE healing, you killed the tank role for all the casual players because the favorite heroes like Rein, Zarya, and D.Va were never the real issue with GOATs. It was always the supports. You gutted them, and then guess what happens? Orisa and Sigma dominate the tank meta for the rest of 6v6's existence. And then because you see that, you think, oh, tanks aren't balanceable. No, you just did the wrong things constantly. That's what happened.
Buff, well, yes. But they didn't just scale them back to Overwatch 1 standards. They scaled them back to even below Overwatch 1 standards. Because even in the 5v5 format, the ability to have a 500 HP Reinhardt or a 400 HP Zarya probably would have been just a little bit too potent. Jake says the idea of a protection tank, like Enabler, D.Va.
I just wanted to get my thoughts on open queue out there. Again, we didn't want to argue open queue at all, right? I told Hawk, I just said, look, that's out of the scope of what we need to argue. If we go down the open queue slope, again, it pulls away from our main point, and that playing tank in this game is just worse, right? It's just worse in this game, and the effect trickles. So the open queue, it's a fun debate to have, but it's outside of the scope of what we need to argue in this debate, and they'll win the debate if they pull us off topic. That's going to be their goal. They're going to want to try to pull us off topic, because we're arguing objective things that have happened in the game and you're going to see continue to happen, right? So we just wanted to stay on point and stay focused. So we didn't really want to go down the open queue slope, but I disagreed that the tanks were the most oppressive things in Overwatch 1. That's not true.
Zarya, Reinhardt just wasn't that popular for the majority of players. A niche population that really likes it, but most of the players aren't really interested in it. So people want to do stuff themselves. Tank in general is not a popular role for any game, MMO, first-person shooter, whatever. 5v5 made a change that better reflects the average player base, and I think that this is probably one of the best arguments for 5v5. You can talk about how we could have reworked tanks and made them more fun and dealt with the synergies and double shield, but ultimately tank just would not have been as popular as a role. I don't think there's anything that would have changed that without completely shifting how the role functions. You need to not...
Junker Queen, Doomfist, more heroes like Zarya, Reinhardt, and D.Va that were very popular. Are we going to act like Reinhardt isn't a popular pick? Are we going to act like Zarya wasn't a popular pick? Are we going to act like D.Va wasn't a popular pick?
Greetings.
These heroes had insanely high pick rates. The type of tanks they put in the game just weren't good. And you could say the exact same thing for support. I'm not saying as many people are going to queue tank as are going to queue DPS, but the idea that there weren't people out there who wanted to play the role is wrong. The types of heroes they designed just didn't attract that kind of player.
Notice that Overwatch 2 didn't just cut down on a tank, but they made the tank more like a DPS and how it functions for most of
If you had put Junker Queen more heroes like Junker Queen and Tank Doomfist in the tank role and kept the game in that style of play, the idea that people wouldn't want to queue that is absurd. Absurd.
And I think that's sadly something that is just speaks more to the average player. Now, there will be a certain niche population that doesn't enjoy that. I think the Mercy community is a phenomenal example that is very antagonistic towards anything that resembles offensive pressure for Mercy. However, most people don't play Mercy because of the lack of offensive pressure. That's why people don't play Mercy. So if we only focus on, oh, Mercy is a good hero because a lot of people like her, well, yes and no. And I think that's a really good point for Jake, especially when we're talking about an entire role. As there will be a certain niche population that's more like a DPS and how it functions for most of the characters. And I think that's sadly something that is just speaks more to the average player. Now, there will be a certain niche population that doesn't enjoy that. I think the
what he said
changed the enabler diva Zarya Reinhardt just wasn't that popular for the majority of players. And
wait.
To have a 500 HP Reinhardt or a 400 HP Zarya probably would have been just a little bit too potent. Jake says the idea of a protection tank like enabler diva Zarya Reinhardt just wasn't that popular for the majority of players. A niche population that really likes it, but most of the players aren't really interested in it. So people want to do stuff themselves.
You mean the 3 heroes that have some of the highest pick rates in the game?
Tank in general is not a popular role for any game, MMO, first-person shooter, whatever. 5v5 made a change that better reflects the average player is, and I think that this
Zarya, I wouldn't say people perceive Zarya and Ryan at least as protection tanks. They're brawlers. They're brawlers.
One of the best.
Zarya's not a protection tank. She can protect people with her bubbles, but people played her like a tanky DPS, just like Junker Queen would have played, just like Tank Doomfist would have played.
Best argument.
Unlike boring heroes like Orisa, like Ball, whose skill sets were just too niche to get the average player, and it wasn't translatable to a first-person shooter. And then Sigma, who was the same case as Ball. Right? They just didn't design any tank heroes that adhered to the core style of Junker Queen or Doomfist. They realized they needed to do that by Overwatch 2. But at that point, they'd stopped putting out content in the game. So
For 5v5, you can talk about how we could have reworked tanks and made them more fun and dealt with the synergies and double shield, but ultimately tank just would not have been as popular as a role. I don't think there's anything that would have changed that.
See, it's not wrong to say tank might not have been as popular as a role, but it's the idea that you couldn't get people to play the role if you actually design interactive heroes is ridiculous. And maybe if you didn't make playing the role miserable because you kept buffing AoE supports and made the roles that made the ability for tank players to get value worthless on these original characters they love, more people would have played the role. Breaking supports in Overwatch 1, I said this always, hurt the tank role more than any other role.
Without completely shifting how the role functions. You need to not notice that Overwatch 2 didn't just cut down on a tank, but they made the tank more like a DPS and how it functions for most of the characters. And I think that's sadly something that is just speaks more to the average player. Now, there will be a certain niche population that doesn't enjoy that. I think the Mercy community is a phenomenal example that is very antagonistic towards anything that resembles offensive pressure for Mercy. However, most people don't play Mercy.
Players should be glad that they can play that hero in a shooter.
Pressure. That's why people don't play Mercy. So if we only focus on, oh, Mercy is a good hero because a lot of people like her, well, yes and no. And I think that's a really good point for Jake, especially when we're talking about an entire role. An entire role is not going to be popular for a certain subset of people because if I'm not playing Roadhog, I'm not really providing offensive pressure. And I think that's one of the biggest arguments for the Overwatch.
That's just not true. Are we going to act like Winston and Zarya and a bunch of these other tanks don't provide offensive pressure? Come on. Come on. Come on, guys. Come on. Think Tank Doomfist isn't going to provide offensive pressure? You don't think divas would fly in? And dive comp was one of the hard metas that entire comp is about tanks providing offensive pressure. Jesus Christ, that's just unbelievable, right? That's just unbelievable.
Samito thinks tank content around Sig did...
I refuse to believe that Spylo and Jake can't acknowledge that those tanks were about brawling or potentially offensive pressure. They had capabilities to do anything, which is what made the role fun.
I think people want to play.
Come on, guys.
Removing
Come
the
on.
off tank, but it cuts both ways, right? So
Come
people
on.
did want to play when Sig came out, which is, you know, hit here and there. But he says that, like, just as, by removing an off tank, you're talking about, like, okay, people don't want to play it, but
Come
you
on
also
now.
just removed an entire role. That's going to be discouraging players too. So ultimately, we really don't know. He thinks the cost outweighs the reward. And
We do know. Many people stopped playing tank. You went to 5v5 to reduce the amount of people that were required to start a game per tank, but you also ended up killing a ton of people's desire to play the role because now all that pressure is on them too, and they're more limited in what they can pick. That's not what made Overwatch fun. To what degree? Why won't your GF let you listen to me? Red flag. Red flag, Xavier. Red flag. Red flag. Red flag. Challenge flag. Red flag. Red flag. We saw Overwatch. What about shaping the game around the players? We saw Overwatch. People didn't want to play tanks, so why not require half the players? It's not that people didn't want to play tank. They didn't make tanks fun. They ruined the role because of the bullshit they put in the game. That wasn't because of 6v6. That was because of the bullshit they put in the game. The reason why people didn't want to play tank is that they didn't design fun, interactive tank heroes for your casual player to pick up. And the more CC they added to the game and the more AoE healing they added to the game, it hurt the tank role more than any other role. That's why people didn't want to play tank. Because of the bad game design, not because of the format. That's not a format issue. That is a game design issue. That's why people stopped playing the role. It's not formatting.
I would disagree, but I do think that he makes a really good point. Avril says the problem is...
I think I was going to say something here. I forgot what it was.
Removing the off tank, but it cuts both ways, right? So people did want to play when Sig came out, which is, you know, hit here and there. Okay, people don't want to... I do think...
Like, if you end up making a role, like a format change, that drives away the exact people you want to queue the role, and then it makes every other role in the game worse, you haven't solved anything. You've made the game worse. What was the BS? I love playing Tank 66, but what would you have changed? The things that people complained about were the CC, the AoE healing. Heroes literally just Brigitte, actually. Literally just Brigitte. Brigitte ruined Overwatch 1. Brigitte single-handedly dismantled Overwatch 1 and they never fixed it. Because it hurt the... Brig made the original tank's playstyles unplayable. For most of role queue. She had a stun, she had AoE healing, she had CC. Every 5 seconds was her bash. Something like that. Crazy cooldown. Right? That's what made it miserable. When those things weren't getting picked, people didn't mind playing tank. It was fun. I wouldn't compare us talking about 6v6 as like standing up to a big company as like standing up to the government. I don't think that's fair, but we'll see.
I think that he makes a really good point. Avril says the problem is a requirement to synergize tanks in 6v6. We talked about this.
Which is not true, by the way.
Tank design is being fixed, hopefully, as we say right now.
It was only incredibly impactful at the highest levels of play. But now, with you make it just one tank, picking the right tank by default for all players is even more punishing.
The strength of counterpicking, the fact that, you know, something like a Wrecking Ball doesn't feel as good in Overwatch 2. But right now, things are being moved slowly in the right direction. New characters have dynamics. I think if nothing else besides Lifeweaver and to an extent Ramacha, all of the Overwatch 2 heroes are a lot more dynamic and very fun to play. The meta is a lot more flexible, even in the pro levels, than it's ever been in any point in time in Overwatch 1. Counterpicking tank as a 5v5 is a result of design or balance, not necessarily 5v5. Sam and Hawk disagree with that. We're just never going to get those tank synergy playstyles back. And I think like that's a tough one to argue with. We just really don't know.
That we do know. We do know. You are never going to get those tank synergies back. You can't get it back. You will never have a second tank being able to hold additional space for you to play Zarya the same way you could in 6v6. You will never have a second tank to allow diva players to actually have to make the choice between peeling or going offensively, which raised the skill ceiling of the game, right? You're never going to have a second tank to synergize with in a Rhine v Rhine duel. Right? Those things are gone. They are gone. And there's no way to balance them back into the game.
Whoever gifted me a membership. Hard.
Kyle, thanks for the 5. Like, there are parts of that we objectively do know. It's not a, well, I think this. No, objectively, they are gone. You cannot get them back. That is irrefutable. That is an objective truth. It doesn't matter what my opinion is, anything like that. You will never be able to play a lot of the original heroes that people loved the same way in 5v5 as you did in 6v6. You will never have as many options. The skill ceiling will permanently be lower. Nothing you can do about that. Nothing you can do about that. That's irrefutable. Now, one of the more refutable points, let's see, let me recap this.
The Wrecking Ball doesn't feel as good in Overwatch 2. People want to play. Removing the off tank, but it cuts both ways, right? So, archaic tank design is being fixed, hopefully, to synergize tanks in 6v6. We talked about this.
And it's not a requirement to synergize these tanks either. It was not a global requirement for the entire player base, right? But in 5v5, now that counter picking, which is like, basically, the point here is that if you synergize tanks, they hard countered other tanks, right? If you weren't on the optimal pick, right? That required execution. It required high-level game knowledge. Like, it required you to actually make the right plays, and it added depth to the game. It's like you get the right combos off at the right timings, and that's what made you good players. And in 5v5, you don't have to worry about that. But now, if you have the inoptimal tank pick in 5v5, you're forced to swap more because there's nothing to cover for your mistake, and it applies it to all ranks. Because in 6v6, when there were 2 tanks, those players actually had to execute something. And in Plat and below, nobody ever executes, right? So it wasn't really a big issue. People could say it is, but it was easy to outplay if you were actually making the right decisions, because people in those lower ranks are bad at execution, right? They just can't execute as well. It is what it is. It's just a clusterfuck down there, right? Which is fine. But now, because you've made it to 5v5, that bad pick is going to stick out like a sore thumb for everybody. And because you've had to adjust the numbers of supports and tanks, that tank, like, it's easier to just absolutely fuck that tank. And it's not as fun. It forces the low-ranked players to counter swap now.
It didn't matter at all for anyone Plat and below, which is most of us. Now, it matters.
Yes. The meta didn't affect low-level play, and now it does way more because there's one less player to run around and mitigate, and they've added all of those values in the counter-swapping picks. They've had to give more power to that solo tank. So if that solo tank's matchup is better than the other tank that they're picking, and God forbid they end up being the flavor of the month tank, which is what they have to do in 5v5 to keep tanks competitive because they're competing for one spot, that is going to directly affect lower ranked players and majority of the player base greater than ever before. Now it is rock, paper, scissors. Now the game where you were supposed to be able to pick more and have more diversity, when you swap heroes, you keep your ult charge. Granted, that's not a 5v5, 6v6 thing. It forces more counter swapping. It removes the freedom. It creates the exact same thing that Avril, Jake, and Spylo are arguing for was a problem in Overwatch 1 is even more of a problem in Overwatch 2. They are proving our point. The thing that they are saying, right, in that, oh, the synergies were too broken, like a tank, like the solo tank can still counter another tank. And because that solo tank has more individual power, it counters the other tank harder. It counters them harder. And it's easier to execute that counter. And not only is it easier to execute that counter because you don't have to synergize it with another player where you had to be someone good, it does it to the entire player base at once. Do you see what I'm saying? 6v6 is more forgiving about the counters because you actually had to execute it. But now in 5v5, it applies it to every player, and you can't outdo it. It's even harder if you have the inoptimal tank pick. And because there's only one role in the game, if you've picked the inoptimal hero, you're going to get punished even more. So their argument is literally like they're actually arguing for 6v6 and they don't realize it yet. Which is really funny. Which is really, really, really funny.
The archaic tank design is being fixed, hopefully, as we say right now. The strength of counterpicking, the fact that, you know, something like a wrecking ball doesn't feel as good in Overwatch 2. And it's one, especially in mid to lower ranks. And I think that's, again, and Orisa, that's ultimately who you're playing with the majority of the time, especially in mid to lower ranks. And I think that's, again, good. So, Jake says the bubble playstyle for Zarya is there in Overwatch 2, enabling somebody else, just like you did Overwatch 1. Hawk says, yes, but you can't bubble a tank. And Jake says, who are you going to bubble? A Roadhog or Orisa? That's ultimately who you're playing with the majority of the time, especially in mid to lower ranks. And I think that's, again, good points from both sides because, yes, the bubble the tank might be something that you might have enjoyed.
That's also not true. The highest pick rate tanks in the lower ranks, Rein, Zarya, Diva. Those stats are out there. Rein, Zarya, Diva. A little bit of Hog, too, right? But bubbling those characters were better than bubbling the DPS now. Because the tanks are guaranteed to walk forward in frontline. The DPS aren't, right?
That's not really going to come back. It's going to be more about you bubbling yourself or a selective DPS if you get them. And maybe that's a flaw in Zarya's current design, right?
It is.
But it's also fair to say that the bubbling tank was something that if you stacked with friends or if you had somebody that you work with, it could work. But that's most of the time, that wasn't the case.
Nah, I'm sorry. Let's not act like plat players weren't like, I know plenty of plat players who understood, hey, I'm just going to bubble my other tank. Like, these people might not be good enough to execute, but they're not complete idiots. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not, you don't have to be Einstein to be like, oh, I'm going to bubble my other tank. That was what was so beautiful about Overwatch. Like, it was some of these simple concepts that anybody could pick up and understand had enormous amounts of depth to them through their timing and how you could execute, right? That's what made the game win Game of the Year, and it still is like a really cool part of the game. So like the idea that a plat player couldn't understand to bubble their other tank, I just don't think is true. I think that this is pro analysts and casters like not understanding like the gap between themselves and the average player. Like I played enough with my average friends to see it's like, oh, like I'm going to bubble my other tank. Like, these kids aren't complete idiots, right? Like they know to bubble the other tank.
Avril says listing things we lost with OpenQ in 6v6 is endless and pointless because that gets to two-edged sword. We can talk about things that we gained with 5v5. It's a bad faith argument. Sam says loss of flexibility with tank option is to gain. We lost with OpenQ in 6v6 is endless and pointless because that gets to two-edged sword. We can talk about things that we gained with 5v5. It's a bad faith argument.
Is Spilo not going to mention this at all? That was a BS point. Because in every other iteration, like when you see, here's the difference. Here's why it's what you lost in 5v5 is different than what you lost from OpenQ and no hero limits. When you went from, let's not even talk about no hero limits because you just couldn't stack the same character over again. Let's talk about OpenQ to roll Q, right? Certain tank play styles at the worst got diminished in the sense of Roadhog, right? Roadhog was always best as like a third or fourth tank just to flex, right, on specific maps. Roadhog lost the most going from open Q to roll Q, right? Because he couldn't he couldn't his role in the game was diminished. You could still pick Hog and do the flanky extra DPS playstyle, right? It was still actually really good, but it wasn't removed from the game altogether, right? The difference is when you go from 6v6 to 5v5, those alternate tank playstyles they weren't diminished, right? They were completely removed from the game. You lost more going from 6v6 to 5v5 than anything open queue or no hero limits allowed. It was a completely different thing that you lost, right? You lost actual physical play styles that characters had that made them diverse and fun. Worst come to worst in 6v6 roll queue from open queue. You just saw play styles get diminished. And it didn't really affect every character. You could still play Rein Diva Brawl, right? You could still like do all those things and have the game function the way it did previously. But in 5v5, those things were deleted from the game. Control-Alt-Delete, long gone, never to be seen again. That's why it's a bad faith argument to say, oh, it's not worth arguing. Bullshit. That is a bullshit argument because what you lost here was never ever like there was nothing close to the loss to this degree. You literally lost play styles. That's what gave the game depth and made it fun. Right? So like the fact like how is Spylo not going to talk about this? Spylo's way too smart. And granted, it's a big video. It's a big video. I'll give him a pass. But the fact that you aren't acknowledging what actually was lost and how it's never been lost before, and neither was Avril, that's a bad faith argument. That's bullshit. And I was reading a lot of the comments, and I'm glad people picked up on that, because that was an absolute horseshit argument. Horseshit. Right? You lost Doom? That's different. That's a hero rework. That's a hero rework, right? So I'm shocked. Well, you know what, guys? There's a reason why the people who want to support 5v5 ignore that point. Because they know it's a massive point. Like, their debate strategy has to be, listen, we cannot let this come up. We're not even going to acknowledge this, right? Because it's not a big deal. I'm not letting that go. Right? I'm not letting that point go. What point is it? Avril said that it's pointless to argue. This is what he said. He said, Avril says listing things that we lost with OpenQ and 6v6 is endless and pointless because like every update, like games lose things, right? And that it's a bad faith argument. I think it's a bad faith argument to ignore the things that you lost, especially when they're completely different fundamentally from what you lost with OpenQ and hero limits, right? You didn't lose the ability to play certain characters in certain manners. But you did when you went to 5v5. Right? Like when you went from no hero limits, like you could still bubble other tanks as Zarya and brawl forward and like have the push and pull. That playstyle wasn't removed, right? When you went from OpenQ to 6v6 roll lock, right? You didn't lose the ability to bubble tanks as Zarya and gain more space and synergize with that player. The only things that happened are certain characters that didn't fit in roll lock had their ability to be played as like flankers or whatever diminished, like Roadhog, right? Where his best playstyle, his design best fit into Overwatch as like a third tank DPS hybrid, right? Hog was an unhealthy character. They had to buff him up and give him a ton of bullshit damage reduction because he was forced into the 6v6 roll lock format and he didn't function as a tank very well, right? He couldn't do anything for his team. So they had to change him a little bit. But his playstyle wasn't completely removed from the game. You could still do it. It just didn't fit in as well. It was diminished. But when you go to 5v5, Hog's ability to play that flanky kind of tank character is completely gone. Zarya's is gone. Diva's is gone. The way you can play Ryan is way more one-dimensional. These characters literally lost the styles of play of the game. And that was the big thing that we wanted to argue because that's the biggest downside to 5v5 that's apparent to all players. And then they just said, oh, well, you can't say that because you lose things all the time and it's a bad faith argument. You can't bring it up. Bullshit. Bullshit. And Spylo didn't talk about it either. That's bullshit. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Ball. You lost Ball's ability to flank and be a disruptor. These niche hero picks that made them unique as characters are gone. They're not diminished. They're not, oh, well, that's not as good because that's not as good in 6v6 roll queue compared to 6v6 open queue because of X reasons and balance. No, they don't fucking exist. Thanos snap, dead. You can't balance them back into the game. Which is where like the big points that Jake and Avril and Spylo agrees with them, we're trying to make. Oh, well, you can just balance these heroes over time to make them like viable. No, you can't. You can't balance that back into the game. You can't do it. It's gone, and to a degree that no other change we've ever seen. And I will say, to give Jake credit, Jake did acknowledge this later on, and he said, what you're arguing is like what you lost compared to how much you gained. And I got to give Jake credit there. He at least acknowledged it, but Spylo and Avril did not. Right? So that's a point that is the biggest L in 5v5, and nobody is even trying to acknowledge the point, except for Jake.
Listen, pointless because that is the two-edged sword. We can talk about things that we gained with 5v5. It's a bad faith argument. Sam says loss of flexibility with tank option is too great. Jake
I'm gonna have to get here in a minute, chat.
Slippery slope. We don't really know. Hawk says tank is too tanky. Tank war is a lot less fun than it was in Overwatch 2. It feels less meaningful because you can get
Jimmy,
an
I do.
advantage, but you can't actually kill the target when you get it.
I remember that, Jimmy.
Advantage. If you misuse a bubble in Overwatch 1, maybe the Rhine dies. If you misuse a bubble in Overwatch 2, it's harder to kill that Zarya, which I think is
How's
fair,
she doing, Jimmy?
but I think that's more of like the dopamine thing where you still get value, you just don't always kill the target, if that makes any sense. General complaints about being able to carry.
How you
Jake
doing,
says it's a
Jimmy?
new problem from you, just being one of the best in the world. SVB chimes in, and I really appreciated this from SVB. He chimes in, he says, maybe because the counterwatch is easier, because it's easier for the worst tank to counter you in the tank mirror. In other words, if I'm the plat player in a diamond lobby and the enemy team is going, Doomfist, maybe if I go Orisa, it's easier for me to provide more value than I should just by playing the counterwatch game.
Yes, exactly. It's one-dimensional and worse. The skill ceiling and the skill floor are crammed together, meaning player skill is not as important. It's more about you picking what's right in the game and the game forcing you to pick the optimal thing. That's not better. That's not better for the game.
This also happens in 6v6 if the Rhine doesn't cooperate with what I want to do. In other words, if I need to carry the lobby as a diamond player in a plat lobby, and I go Rhine, my off tank goes Hog. Well, now I can't carry anymore. Right? It's a lot harder to carry. So it's really tricky to go both ways.
Yes, but you have a better chance to do it in 6. Like you can never completely eliminate that from the game, right? But the 5v5 format puts more of an emphasis on that by default than 6v6 ever did.
So I think, again, this comes down to a hero design issue, not necessarily something that's inherent to 5v5 and 6v6. Why is Orisa allowed to get as much value as she does with as little effort? That's the problem with Orisa, not necessarily 5v5.
You can't solve this entirely, Spylo. You're right. Like, some heroes are going to be easier to get more value on. You can never, eliminate that entirely. But 5v5 emphasizes that problem more. That's our point. It doesn't solve that problem better than 6v6 does. It creates it for the entire player base. That's the argument. It's not that, you can solve this completely. No, a lot of these issues are not completely solvable, but 5v5 makes more stick out poorly than 6v6 did. It's easier to fix it design-wise in 6v6 than it is in 5v5.
Avril says the average player wants value easier. Hawk says counterpicking is easier for lower ranks. Jake says it's easier to deal with outliers and synergies in 5v5. Some just etc. thoughts. Sam says it's
I can't debate Alpha because I have to go in literally 5 minutes. I have a creator call in 20 minutes.
Pointless to cry over more carry potential, but there's just more variance in 5v5. It happens. We talked about this. It's just the nature of 5v5.
No, there's not. There's less variance in the game. There's literally less variance in the game.
DPS feels like a lot less carry in Overwatch 2 because you can't kill the tanks like you could in Overwatch 1. Supports are also tougher to kill. Thinks that this can maybe be balanced in 5v5. Hawk says focusing on heroes who haven't aged well is really, really, really important. He just really seems hung up on the fact that the game was not supported back in 6v6 transition and seems bitter and frustrated at that. And I think that's really fair. So here's the crux of the issue. Is it easier to balance supports or two tanks working together? That's the question that you really have to ask yourself if you're trying to find which side of the argument that you're really going.
You have to start with the supports. You have to start with AoE healing in the supports. Because if the AoE healing gets too good, the tanks get too good.
Going for. Jake.
My mom's been better ever since you mentioned her. I'm glad to hear that, Jimmy.
5v5 support combos were not as big of a deal as tank combos. Not as many bad support combos as tank combos. In other words, outside of a few really, really bad combos like, a Lucio Mercy. And even that actually has some situations when it's doable. There are fewer really bad or really OP support combos when we compare to the tank combos of Overwatch.
Yeah, because they're all broken now. There's fewer OP combos because all of them have the same broken bullshit with get out of jail free cards and abilities. The reason why you don't see specific support combos just dominating is because they all do the same broken shit. They all have MOs. They all have insane mobility. They're all generalists who do everything in the game. That's a one-dimensional, boring game.
Watch one, which I think is a fair point. Tank is a lot more reliant on combos than support. Sam says the role passive enables supports to be less reliant on the combos because of on their duo.
Which
Jake
is
says
broken.
no, the passive is not that crucial for the support synergy situation. I think it could go either way. I think something like the support passive does.
I'm not going to argue that about the passive too much, though, to be fair, because like that could have just as easily happened in 6v6. So
does help some supports to function a little bit better without needing as much help, but I do see the point to both sides. Sam says supports definitely did rely on each other. Avril says it's not about supports relying on each other.
Well, let me rephrase. All supports relied on Brigitte in Overwatch 1. Like, Brigitte was just so broken, they all relied on her as an anchor, and you could just play anything with it.
It's about, are there wildly OP combos? You know, whether we rely on each other or not, was there something abusable about a Moira Lucio?
Right, we're gonna have to speed
like, oh
through the
no,
rest
they're
of
gonna
this
Moira
chat.
Lucio.
Shit.
Oh crap, man, we're gonna lose this game. Right?
All right. I'm not going to talk too much over him from this point on.
While the pendulum swings too bad to good, there's a lot more with tank and support. So in other words, when we have a really bad tank combo or a really good tank combo, there's a lot more variance than there is with the support situation. In terms of, oh, they have an OP support combo or they don't have an OP support combo. Tanks are either broken or nobody wants to play it, requires optimization. Sam says, yeah, but it wasn't that much hated outside of double shields. That's what made tank fun. Jake 6v6 says tank synergy limits new hero designs because there's too much of a fear of, what if we give this character, would Junker Queen would have been released with the fear of the fact of what could they do with a shout and a speed tank with a bubble?
It could have.
Limited hero design because we didn't want to give...
if you balance AoE healers so that tanks are actually punishable, don't have infinite uptime, you can run anything. The problem with the new tank designs is that they literally overkitted every new tank. They overkitted every new hero. Right? That was the problem.
Utility to a tank that could be abused in a combo. Hawk says, you think devs couldn't have done it? I do. But then I really want to point out that there's an irony here between both of these where we think that, like, Jake says that they don't think that they can do it. Hawk thinks that they could. But really both sides are second-guessing the developer's competence in some way, shape, or form. Hawk has just got done thinking that developers incompetent of putting up quality reworks at all or balancing the game properly or the support at all. But then he does think that the devs could have come up with new heroes. And I guess you could say the opposite is true on the opposite side. So I think there's a little bit of a...
I mean, you could always put the heroes out. You could always put the heroes out. Like, the idea that you couldn't put Junker Queen in 6v6 is silly. I've played it. It's fine. Right? You just, like, if you're trying to overkit a hero with more tools, it's actually really easy to do. You just drastically lower the values of those tools. Right? If you have a high-frequency hero that can do a ton of different things, as long as the actual power of those abilities are lower, and you multiply the two together, in turn you get value, right? As long as that value equates to an even amount with other characters, it's fine.
A little bit of hypocrisy to a little bit extent here from both sides. But I think I see Jake's point, I see Hawk's point, but, you know, draw your own conclusions. Avril concludes, what led to a better design of the game that's easier for the devs is 5v5. Game is really hard to balance, so how are good players...
I can't wait to watch that be proven completely wrong over time, by the way.
And bad players going to be balanced around. It's difficult. I think tank was a specific issue in Overwatch 1 more than any other role because of the synergies. Doing the thing that we have now reduces the optimization extremes where you have a really OP combo or a really bad combo. There's a little bit more of a balance between there. Or outside of your team picks a Roadhog, there aren't many situations where you're like, oh no, we picked a Zarya, GG's, we lose. If you think that, that's probably more of a you problem than a game problem. Hawk concludes, we want to balance 6v6. I just want to balance 6v6. I would have liked to have seen a 6v6 in a balanced format. I don't know if things are going to get better. Jake concludes, reality is that people did not want to play tank. People don't like playing tank role. This is necessary. Overall, queue times between roles are better than Overwatch 1. Again, we don't really know if that's the case. It's an anecdote. I think it's probably true, but we don't really know. So we don't know stats. We can't really say. It fits the better player population. People are more interested in personal responsibility. Triple support, not...
They're not, though. Why are less people queuing tank in this game? Like it makes their mistakes more punishable, which drives new players away in the tank role when they're playing solo tank. It's just not true. Like that's not the sentiment that people have had. Like I've seen a ton of players sit there and say that. I don't think you can make that claim.
Not nearly as good as triple tank. Not as much as abused. We talked about this already. 3 DPS also something that was rarely abused. So basically the point being is that tank is, he's trying to echo Avril's point that tank is an inherently broken role through its survivability, through its utility. That always led to synergies and combos mattering more for tank than DPS or support. What happens if my entire team is matrixed or shielded or bubble? Discussion on map control objective. We'll talk about that in a second. I don't think fun Overwatch 2 heroes like Kiriko could have functioned in that environment. So this is the big thing with GOATs. GOATs basically existed, if you guys don't know what GOATs are, Ryan, Zarya, Diva, Brig, Lucio, Zen. It started with Moira. At the time, it basically was just turtle on point. Don't take any map control. Don't take any angles. Just group up, heal, survive, and push cart. And it just was able to survive any sort of pressure from as many map control in different angles. And if you're familiar with first-person shooters, angles, map control, crossfire, sightlines, things like that are very, very important fundamentals of first-person shooters. And basically what Overwatch 2 did is, through the power of tanks and to an extent supports as well, Brigitte was an awesome, terrible support. They were allowed to cheat the game and just ignore map control. And so Jake's argument is that while support being broken was a problem with that as well, I think that tank has more consistently been able to cheat the system through the ability to ignore map control and just group up and huddle up on point. Because the more people are grouped up, the more value my shield gets. The more people are grouped up, the more value my matrix gets. And I actually think this is a fair point with something that was not brought up. This is a very important point in the fact that there have been not just double shield, but several other metas where the ability to do this has functioned because of two tanks. Rein Diva, there were several metas where Rein Diva was able to go to point and turtle on point. Not as strong as GOATs, but not as strong as double shield, but was something that was still able to be done. Something that was more enabled by the tank line than the support line. Winston Diva, Moira, Lucio. Again, Moira Lucio brought a lot.
Really? You sure about that? You want to know the concept that made turtling 2 broken in the game that never got addressed properly? You want to know what busted that? Obviously, I'll give him credit. He says that wasn't as much true for Rein Diva. But do you want to know what allowed Rein Diva to be even considered in that realm that continuously was added for 6 straight years to support characters? AOE healing. It allowed for the tanks to just take tons of poke damage constantly and not be punished for it. It didn't matter if you took poke damage. But if you played Lucio Ana, they couldn't do that because as a tank, you actually had to be mindful of the damage you took. But because every single support they put in the game after Ana for 6 straight years all had immortality or AoE healing, it was a hero design issue caused by AoE healing and the supports. You're right. It might not have been the support synergies in the Rein Diva mirror turtling on point that allowed that to happen. It might not have been the synergy. Do you want to know why? Because supports and AoE healing are so broken as a concept, it doesn't even necessarily need to synergize. And actually, Lucio, BAP are 2 AoE healers. But because AoE healing values got as strong as the single target healing values, which broke the fundamental philosophy of the game, it didn't even matter. Those tank synergies were not oppressive at launch. And they wouldn't have been oppressive with the original cast. Which is why you couldn't play double shield very well with Merciana, and it was counterable. Why Rein Diva could not turtle endlessly on the point with Lucio Ana. Because AoE healing made it so taking damage as a tank didn't matter nearly as much, which allowed those turtle strategies to come up. It wasn't the tank synergies that caused this. It was that Blizzard, for 5 straight years, put broken supports in the game that broke the fundamental laws of the game over and over and over again to follow Jeff Kaplan and Jeff Goodman's flawed failure of a design model to create a complicated game and make it easier over time for more players. Their idea of making the game easier was fundamentally flawed and wrong. They thought by putting broken heroes in the game that remove the decision making and allow players to just heal the whole team at once makes the game easier for players. But it really doesn't. What it does is ruin the game and break the game. You cannot do it by breaking the fundamental rules of the game because it breaks the ceiling of the game. It was not because of tanks. It was because of AoE healing. I challenge you to run any of those comps without AoE healing. They will never be as oppressive as they were. Not even close. Goats could not have existed without AoE healing, being as broken as it was. It was not the tanks. It was AoE healing that made it all possible. And the Sombra Goats meta proved that for Goats. Ryan Diva was absolutely answerable if you could only heal one of those tanks with burst healing at once. But when you allow an entire team to burst heal, that's what causes these turtle comps, not the tank synergies.
A lot to the table there, but the fact that you needed Diva Matrix was the big thing. The fact that that was actually possible was more to do with the tanks than it was to do with the supports. And I think that's a really, really important point. We never ever want to go away from the point where the survivability of the tank combo is what allows them to cheat the game.
The tank combos didn't let them cheat. AoE healing let them cheat. If you misuse those tank combos and they were way more punishable without AoE healing, they actually died. Every time.
I wish 6v6 rule queue again, like Hawk, got a chance.
I need to stop rambling. I have to go to this call.
With the developer attention. 5v5 is still good.
I'm cutting this close.
It just created an own set of unique problems and emphasized other problems that were already in the game, just made them worse. I think mostly talking about supports. I think 6v6 was better overall. A lower floor, higher skill ceiling. I think he's talking specifically about the ability to combo certain tanks, which just added an extra layer of complexity that isn't there. Obviously, everyone in here this was a pretty heated debate. I think there was a lot of interrupting. I think people could have done a little bit more patient to actually let people finish their thoughts.
Hey, I was good.
It also seemed like a little bit like outside of Samito. With I don't know. It's not really fair to say, but it did feel like a little at times people were more ready to jump and just disagree and tell you why you were wrong.
That was true. But that also made it kind of fun. Like, I felt the energy in that debate. Like, I love that shit. I live for that shit. It was awesome. It was
a
awesome.
productive debate if you were listening to it, but I don't think it's going to change anybody's minds. It changed my mind about a couple of things. It definitely shifted my perspective of what are some things that we need to be looking out for. Okay, I'll talk about those in a second.
I'm not going to interrupt them.
Everyone's good friends. Chat apparently was really, really bad. A lot of people got banned for just being super insulting and they were generally turtly. So that's unfortunate. I think a lot of people get really emotionally attached to this, which is kind of funny to me. Okay, so main takeaways. Let's try and sum this up as best I can. 66 advocates. It was enjoyable, high skill ceiling tank synergies. 5v5 has indirectly led to DPS feeling less useful through tanks being hard to kill and support creep. Double shield was the most hated tank synergy specifically, but other stuff wasn't quite as bad. 66, my cat's going crazy. 66
that was his cat, bro.
Because Overwatch 1 died.
I was like, what the fuck?
When 6v6 role queue came out not much long afterwards. That was when Overwatch 2 development started. Too many fossil characters now that were 5v5 heroes that just don't fit in the current meta.
He got me.
Ball, Diva, things like that. The unkillable solo tank is just as enjoyable as double tank. More variables for quality game with one fewer player, so there's more unpredictability. She's going crazy. I think it's more unpredictability, so it makes things a lot more harder. And the counterpick meta is still an issue. So while
I think Spylo would have been a great addition to that debate.
Picking has always kind of been a problem. People are arguing that it's more of a counterpick issue because when we have one fewer tank to compensate for the strengths and weaknesses, again, whether that actually happened in most games, it's a lot easier to counterpick. So 5v5 advocates. Tank synergy was an unfixable variable with a utility provided to cover weakness, either huge strength or huge weakness. So it was either, again, tank synergy was super strong or super weak, too much variability, too easy to be abused, cheating the game, or just an awful experience if you're playing Zarya Hawk.
Don't worry.
There's more dynamic.
See, I heard what Frito said, Mateo. He listed everything, all the problems in the game he listed were caused by 5v5, and he doesn't realize it yet. They're still on their copium. I'm telling you, give them 6 months to a year of the same shit happening and having it be unfixable, and they're going to start saying, wait a minute. They're going to change their minds. I'm telling you. Like, I know this is true. I have a great read on these things. I'm telling you.
With character design through 5v5, which is overall positive. As I said, that's not necessarily unique to 5v5 potentially, but I think it's something that it was the kick in the pants for devs to actually do it. Because Symmetra with only one tank is not going to function as a tank buster or burning off of a shield only. She has to actually find a way to make the character work beyond that. If I'm playing an Ana and I don't have a tank passive or a support passive, then I'm going to die to dive so frequently because I don't have an off tank. So I think it was kind of the kick in the pants to make a couple of quality of life changes Okay, more individual carry potential in 5v5, more dynamics in team fight. Besides, this is tank trait first. We talked about that. Tank combos besides double shield were also difficult to play into. Winston Zarya is a great one where the Winston jumps in with bubble and he has no weaknesses. It is almost impossible to counterplay. You can't sleep him, you can't CC him, you can't boop him, you can't avoid him. He's going to come, and I think that's something that like obviously people will have mixed memories of, but it's an issue. Support issue can be.
It's incredibly hard to execute, and now tanks are just invulnerable on their own anyway. Now at the skill floor, that same thing, in order for a tank to exist, is true, just at its skill floor. Look at Orisa. That same thing is happening, except now instead of actually having to be good players to execute it and being punishable in 1v1s if you overextend, the tanks are just unpunishable, do the exact same thing, and the supports can just pull them out of any shit situation they want. It's even more true in this game, and they're less punishable.
Be balanced and more reasonable to balance. It's more reasonable to balance this than it is to completely revamp the game and go back to 6v6. The protector mindset or enabler of like, oh man, I miss playing Ryan with a Zarya, or man, I miss peeling for my team as a diva, is just a niche desire that most people don't miss that. The vocal minority who liked that are going to complain, but that's always going to be the case with any change that you make. My personal points, I had 2 points for favor of 5v5. And they're super simple. One, it was less visual clutter. That's pretty much just how it is. There's objectively less visual.
We're in a meta where there's 4 drones. That's game design, not format. There's freaking 4 drones and turrets in the meta right now.
Visual clutter. I mean, people can still whip out, oh, look at this Iari ult and this sim wall and, you know, all. Obviously, there's obviously still visual clutter in 5v5, but it's objectively less visual clutter because there's 2 fewer players. It's not that hard. And also, 5v5 is the big one. This is just where it's at. It's going to be 5v5. So I think these debates are fun to discuss things, and I think they're fun to discuss because it raises problems with our current format so that we can fix our current format. So we're 5v5. It's not changing, guys. Like, get over it.
Okay, I'll give him the visual clutter, though. He is right. There's 2 less players. That's not true. The idea that they can't change 5v5 is bullshit. That's not true. The company owns the game. They changed to 5v5. They can change back. It's happened before in the company. If the product is clearly inferior, it can change back. The idea is that companies never backtrack. Like, y'all have been playing too many Blizzard games for 10 years. This happens all the time in the world. People can backtrack.
But we should take these debates as we look at this list here, right? All these problems, we got to address some of these problems, right? Can we not fix some of these problems? And I think that's where our priority should be. These debates are productive because they bring issues up with 5v5, which is where we're going right now. So we need to be dealing with those issues. And that's why I think these debates are really important. So my points are 5v5, but also my problems with 5v5. Definitely directly interact with the worst of the enemy team without a second. Need shield, need to address this. So in other words, if I'm playing Reinhardt Hog, my Hog, it's a terrible combo, but my Hog will get Sleep Dart, most likely than not, and I won't have to worry as much about Sleep Dart. Or, maybe the Sombra will go for...
Oh, they had to nerf Sleep Dart collectively for the tank. And guess what? They're going to keep adding more CC into the game. Now you won't have another tank to help you whatsoever. Good luck. Have fun. You're fine.
Hog instead of me. There's just fewer things that I'm going to have to deal with directly myself because they're going to be spread more evenly, especially on the big fat guy in the flank, right? So... the problem with tank right now is that because you are the solo tank, you are going to be interacting with the worst of the enemy team. And it's not an accident that besides something like a Roadhog hook, if I'm playing Reinhardt, I don't care about the enemy Diva's Matrix. I don't care about the enemy Zarya bubble. I don't care about Sigma Shield. There's maybe like Rock or something. But a lot of the things that I'm complaining about as a tank are not the enemy tank's things, but actually the enemy supports and DPS. So when we remove a tank, I'm going to have to deal with more things. I'm not thinking about, I don't have to deal with the enemy Sigma, Rock, and Hook. I'm thinking more about the fact that now I individually have to deal with both Discord and Sleep Dart and Hack by myself. And I think that's something we have to look at either with tank passive or the individual identity of those abilities in themselves. I do think that, like Hawk was saying, fossils have to be addressed. The ease of counterpicking flaw designs. So in other words, Ball Diva. How do we deal with these designs? How easy is it to pick Orisa and counterpick something like a Doomfist? Is that too easy? And I think that there are some character changes and character designs. I've talked a lot about the set length in some of my other videos that need to be changed going into the 5v5 format because they are exacerbated just a little bit when you remove that extra variable. And the last thing is just again the support creep, lack of DPS impact. This is going to be something that's going to be taking a lot of tweaking. I think you can go too far in either direction. As they were saying earlier, it's a pendulum effect. So a lot of people complaining early in Overwatch 2's release, and then now a lot of people complaining that it's too strong. I think it's not just the support power creep though. I also think that people's mentalities have shifted with support, and people have gotten better even though the support role necessarily hasn't been super giga buffed. So I think that people got better at the role while it's also been minorly buffed at the same time. So anyway, that's gonna about do it up for me. Obviously a ton to talk about.
All right. I always like watching Spylo's videos. If you guys haven't subbed to him, go check it out. I think he made some interesting points, I guess. I disagree with him on the turtling thing. I'm gonna have to keep it brief. I'm sorry, I can't really explain it all because I have a big our big Mineplex announcement is in. I have to start a creator call in 10 minutes, so I have to go prepare for that. But make sure to go show Philo some love. I'm sorry I could not answer and let him articulate more on his points as much as I would have liked. We got constrained for time, so that's my fault. But yeah, make sure you guys can head over to his channel and check him out. I do need to head out here. Be ready to go subscribe to the Mineplex Games YouTube channel and be looking on Twitter. We're about to shake things up today. I'm really excited. So I love you guys. Thank you so much. Catch y'all later. Peace out.